Chapter 1354. Lan Buhui turned back with all his focus, causing the space to tremble. But when he turned back, there was nothing behind him. He knew he had been tricked at once. The feeling in Lan Buhui's heart was indescribable. Even if he was a fool, he couldn't have used the same trick to trick him twice in the blink of an eye. In his fury, he turned back immediately, only to see Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing transforming into two streaks of lightning, flying out to the left and right. The walls of the wooden hut had already split open soundlessly. Half of his body had already broken through the wall. He shouted, "Stay here!" His two hands grabbed out at the same time. The air shook violently. Then, two huge hands suddenly formed and grabbed out fiercely. The moment the huge hands formed, Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing also finally rushed out with a loud crash. As if they had expected Lan Buhui's actions. When Mo Tianji crashed through the wall, he shouted, "Lan Buhui, your father is Jia. Now that you want to kill Jia, isn't that the same as killing your father?" Lan Buhui's body trembled violently. The two huge hands suddenly paused in midair. With a loud crash, Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing were already 100 feet away from the wooden hut. "My father is my father, but the current Jia is my enemy." Lan Buhui let out a low roar, as if trying to convince himself. His two huge hands attacked again. This time, it wasn't a grab but a smack. After the buffer time of this sentence, it was already impossible to grab him back. He could only severely injure him. And this it, he might just be smacked to death. Lan Buhui felt rather regretful. He didn't let Mo Tianji finish his words. But he was also well aware that since Mo Tianji had chosen to escape at such a time, it meant that he had no intention of telling him the truth at all. He only gave a rough outline of his battle plan for Gu Duxing to remember. That was all. Therefore, it didn't matter anymore. The two palms struck out, producing a tearing sound in the air. White smoke rose and two gusts of wind shot out like cannonballs. Gu Duxing ran. He thought to himself, "Everything that happened today was all because of my negligence that even Tianji ended up in danger. Now, I finally have a chance to escape. And we're splitting into two. As long as we can block one attack, one of us will definitely be able to escape. If I were to turn around and charge back now, entangle Lan Buhui, and self-detonate at the critical moment, Tianji would be able to survive. Moreover, when I return this time, Tianji will have already gone far away. He may not know that I died for him. His heart wouldn't feel burdened either." Thinking of this, his body that was about to rush into the dense forest suddenly stopped. He was originally charging forward like an arrow leaving the bow. But now he paused in midair. Then he stomped his feet on a big tree. His body spun around, and he rushed back like a hurricane. The sword light was resplendent. Gu Duxing pursed his lips. His gaze was calm and fervent. "Tianji, I won't let you die. I'll pay the price for my mistake." As Mo Tianji rushed out, he thought to himself, "I haven't finished speaking yet. Therefore, I still have a bargaining chip. But Gu Duxing doesn't. Therefore, it was not easy to find an opportunity this time. He must let Gu Duxing go. If I go back now, I have complete confidence that I can restrain Lan Buhui. If worse comes to worst, I'll self-destruct. It could also stop Lan Buhui for a moment. That way, the chances of escaping alone would be greatly increased." The moment he thought of this, Mo Tianji rushed to the front of a big tree. The tip of his foot hooked on the tree. Taking advantage of the momentum, he spun around the tree and actually spun back like a top. Without slowing down, he turned around and rushed back the way he came. "Second brother Gu definitely won't know that I'm going back. This way, even if there's a knot in his heart, with Chu Yang around, it will be untied sooner or later. Of course, the most important thing is that second brother Gu can go back alive. Just this point alone is enough." Mo Tianji rushed back like a gust of wind. Because the two of them had turned around, Lan Buhui's palm wind had actually turned from a pursuit to a head-on attack. When Mo Tianji took the incomplete version of the heavy pill from Gu Duxing's hands, he had silently cut open half of it with his fingernail and left the other half in Gu Duxing's hands. Otherwise, with Mo Tianji's calculations, he would have long known that there was only one incomplete version of the heavy pill in Gu Duxing's hands. Why would he bother asking? That was completely for Lan Buhui to hear. It was to let him know that there was only one left and that he had already eaten it. And as expected, Lan Buhui didn't suspect anything. At that time, Mo Tianji had already formulated an escape plan. Under normal circumstances, even if an accident happened, the two of them wouldn't be able to escape from the supreme martial artist's grasp. The only variable was this half of the heavy pill. As long as Gu Duxing kept it in his mouth while escaping and took it head-on, he would immediately digest the medicinal effects. Gu Duxing would have more than a 10% chance of escaping. And if he couldn't take care of both sides, Lan Buhui's choice would definitely be to chase after Mo Tianji. If Mo Tianji came back on his own accord, then Gu Duxing's chances of escaping would become 10,000%. It would be foolproof. Mo Tianji had calculated all the details and everything was going according to his plan. But he never expected that Gu Duxing would actually turn back. Both of their choices were very foolish. So foolish that it made one really want to catch them and give them a good beating to vent one's anger. But only this kind of foolishness was the most precious thing in the world. How many people in the world could do that? If it were you or me, would we be able to rush back at that time? If you and I could have such a brother in this world who could rush back at such a time, would you cherish him? Bam! Bam bam! Mo Tianji's sword and Gu Duxing's sword collided with Lan Buhui's palm wind at the same time. Both of them let out a muffled grunt, their bodies tumbling backward as they spat out mouthfuls of blood. A head-on collision would definitely inflict more damage. Both of them had completely lost the ability to move. But the next moment, both of them regained their strength from God knows where. Suddenly, they stood up in a daze. They looked in the opposite direction in disbelief. With a boom, the wooden house turned into debris that filled the air. Lan Buhui leaped into the air and rushed into the sky. Then he noticed the two dumbfounded people on his left and right. For a moment he was also very surprised. Why hadn't the two of them left? Mo Tianji suddenly jumped up furiously with strength from God knows where. He rushed toward Gu Duxing. "You bastard! Why aren't you leaving? You're going to piss me off. Bastard! Second brother Gu. You're practically the worst bastard. Is this the time for you to fucking be loyal?" Gu Duxing's eyes were red. He said furiously, "Then why aren't you leaving? You've already gone so far, why aren't you leaving? Why did you come back? Who allowed you to come back? Aren't you very resourceful? Are you that fucking resourceful? Why didn't you escape when you could?" Mo Tianji looked at Gu Duxing speechlessly and helplessly. Gu Duxing looked at Mo Tianji helplessly and heartache. Both of them were trembling from head to toe, their eyes wide open. They glared fiercely at each other like fighting cocks. After a long while, their gazes softened. Suddenly, they fell to the ground at the same time and chuckled. "I died today. My death was worth it." Gu Duxing coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood. Mo Tianji smiled. "It was very worth it." He heaved a long sigh. "But you should have left. If the news didn't get out, our brothers would be in danger." Gu Duxing coughed and chuckled. "I remember boss once said, when I can't take care of everything else, I only care about what's right in front of me." Mo Tianji chuckled. "Since that's the case, let us brothers go to hell hand in hand." Lan Buhui had been standing quietly at the side the whole time, watching them. There was envy, jealousy, and also gratitude in his eyes. With his experience, he could naturally tell at a glance why these two people were rushing back desperately after they had rushed out. They were using their own lives in exchange for a chance at survival for the other party. In his 10,000 years of life, he had seen a lot of deception and deception. He had seen a lot of people being intimate with each other and then taking out weapons the moment they turned around. He had seen a lot of people forgetting righteousness for the sake of profit. He had seen a lot of fickleness in the world. He had seen a lot of heartless and ungrateful people. However, this was the first time he had seen people like these two in front of him. "I've never had a brother like them in my life. Compared to these two people on the brink of death, how poor am I? There are 9 of them. I don't have a single one. At a time like this, Lan Buhui suddenly thought of his own father. He thought of the words his father had said before he left, "I have no regrets in my life." Suddenly, he understood the true meaning of these words. No wonder there was a saying that the feelings of tribulation were world-shaking. "I'm very touched, but I still have to kill the two of you." Lan Buhui sighed. He said somewhat respectfully. Mo Tianji laughed bitterly. Seeing that this fellow actually came back, I was also completely disheartened. I didn't want to live either. Gu Duxing grumbled. "Didn't you come back all the same?" When the two of them faced Lan Buhui earlier, although they were at an absolute disadvantage, their bodies were unharmed and their cultivation was still there. They still had the strength to fight, which meant that there was still a glimmer of hope. But now, they were truly like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. There was no hope at all. No matter how intelligent Mo Tianji was, under such circumstances, he could only be at his wits' end. "Mo Tianji, looks like you don't intend to tell me the rest of your words," asked Lan Buhui respectfully. Mo Tianji smiled freely. "Now, I'm afraid you won't be willing to listen even if I tell you." A smile appeared in Lan Buhui's eyes. "That's right. Even if you say it, the more I don't want to hear it." In the face of such brotherly love, if one of them suddenly turns into a spineless coward in an instant, even I myself will break down. Mo Tianji laughed. "Since that's the case, let's make it quick. Don't worry, if I am fortunate enough to meet your father, I will pass on your words to him." Lan Buhui nodded solemnly and said seriously, "Thank you very much." As he spoke, he heaved a long sigh. There was actually some melancholy in his voice. "Have a safe journey, both of you." Mo Tianji laughed and Gu Duxing chuckled. They actually didn't take it to heart at all. Lan Buhui let out a long howl and shouted, "Lan Buhui of the Lan clan, today, I will kill the second tribulation in the wilderness. Heaven and earth, remember this moment. Bright moon and cool breeze, pay tribute to your soul." After he finished speaking, he raised his palm like a knife and struck down fiercely. Chapter 1355. A strong gust of wind howled and rushed toward Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing's hearts. If this attack hit them, their hearts would definitely shatter. Mo Tianji smiled and exchanged a look with Gu Duxing. In the last moments of their lives, both of them saw regret in each other's eyes. Unfortunately, they still couldn't fulfill their promise to Boss after all. "We originally wanted to accompany Boss to dance with the wind and clouds, rule the world, and conquer the heavens. But today, we can't help but feel regretful." But at the moment of certain death, although the two of them felt regretful, they didn't regret it. The two of them exchanged a look and smiled. Then, they closed their eyes in unison. Their expressions were calm. "Brothers, let's meet again in the next life. Let's laugh proudly together. Boss, take care. Brothers, take care." The moment Lan Buhui made his move, his emotions were extremely complicated. He couldn't tell if it was pity, respect, or something else. In any case, this attack was purely based on strength. It actually didn't carry any killing intent. His words had just left his mouth when a sword light suddenly flashed like a shooting star. Someone said, "You're not qualified to kill my brother." His voice had just sounded when a sword light, like a silver dragon, turned in the air and completely cut off Lan Buhui's palm wind. After that, a sharp and fierce sword energy suddenly filled the entire space and the entire sky. The black dragon sword at Gu Duxing's waist let out a clang and automatically unsheathed half a foot, giving off an excited sword intent. Sword supremacy! Along with the sword light, a figure landed quietly in front of Lan Buhui. The sword in his hand was like the ripples of autumn water, sparkling and shining. The tall and suave figure was like a towering and indestructible mountain, shielding Gu Duxing and Mo Tianji behind him. Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing opened their eyes abruptly, surprised and surprised. In that instant, both of them suddenly felt at ease. "Boss is here. We don't have to die anymore." Chu Yang's cultivation was clearly much weaker than Lan Buhui's, but at this moment, the same thought came to both of their minds. It was as if as long as this figure in front of them was around, their brother would be indestructible. Even if the sky collapsed, he would be able to push it back. You're not qualified to kill my brother. This was what boss said. Low-grade supreme martial artist. Not qualified. Both of their eyes shone at the same time. Yes, you're not qualified. Even if you're a low-grade supreme martial artist. Lan Buhui stopped. He took 3 steps back and said with a strong resentment, "It's you." "It's me." That person snorted and said, "So it's you. So you are the Tribulation Sword Master." Lan Buhui's murderous aura suddenly filled the air. In front of him stood a man with a hideous golden mask on his face. Lan Buhui's memory of this mask was still fresh in his mind. That extremely ugly middle-grade supreme martial artist had killed his way into the Lan clan because of this golden-masked man's words. He was called away. So this was the Calamity Sword Master. I'm the Calamity Sword Master. Is it so strange? The golden-masked Chu Yang sneered. It's just that it's too late for you to know now. Too late? Lan Buhui burst into laughter. Just based on your 3rd-grade sword sovereign cultivation? Don't you think it's funny? If Chu Yang hadn't made a move, Lan Buhui wouldn't have been able to see through his cultivation. However, the moment Chu Yang made a move just now, Lan Buhui had immediately gotten a feel for the entire team. It turned out that this bastard was only a 3rd-grade sword sovereign. Lan Buhui, do you dare to fight to the death with me? Another voice rang out from behind Lan Buhui. This voice was extremely unpleasant to the ears, as if a male duck had taken some mute medicine and was only half cured. Then he spoke with a mouthful of sand in his mouth, as if a large dustpan was violently scraping the sand. Anyone who heard it would feel their hair stand on end. This voice was definitely not unfamiliar to Lan Buhui. He turned around like a whirlwind, only to see that there was someone behind him. This person had one eyebrow that shot up to the sky and the other that shot straight down to hell. One of his eyes was wide open, the other was narrowed into a slit, and one of his ears seemed to have split open. Yet the other ear was almost stuck to his scalp. Only his mouth was slightly more normal. Right now, it was grinning widely, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth. Looking at Lan Buhui, he was giggling. So it's you. Lan Buhui was so angry that he was about to explode. You're also one of the tribulations? This person was, of course, Tan Tan. At his words, he flew into a rage. Bullshit. I am the great Lord Tan. Lan Buhui was so angry that his nose was crooked. Lord Tan? Which part of you is big? You're actually a lord? Tan Tan said furiously, which part of me is big is for my wife to see. Who do you think you are to ask me which part of me is big? What are you up to? What are you up to? Even though they were still digesting the incomplete version of the heavy pill that Chu Yang had just given them after they were severely injured, Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing almost burst into laughter. Lan Buhui almost vomited blood. Scoundrel! Tell me your name. This bastard actually slandered him for having homosexual tendencies? Compared to his rage, Tan Tan was even more furious. He pointed at Lan Buhui with one hand and pointed at himself with the other. Scoundrel? Open your fucking eyes wide and take a look. Is there a scoundrel as handsome as me? Do you have eyes to pee? Lan Buhui took a deep breath and suddenly quieted down. The moment he quieted down, it was as if even the air had stopped circulating. Clearly, he had already sunk into a state of frenzy that was about to erupt. In this moment he was heaven and earth. He had already become one with heaven and earth. Once he made a move, it would be earth-shattering. Tan Tan stared at him with wide eyes. Suddenly he jumped back and patted his chest. Fuck, you scared me to death. Look at your posture, you really look like an expert. What? You want to play a game with Lord Tan? What? You can kill someone just by posing? Oh yeah, you want to beat me up, don't you? You want to kill me, don't you? Lord Tan's current appearance was no different from that of a local ruffian. It was very realistic. Lan Buhui stared at him, but his voice was calm and collected. He took a step forward. So what if I want to beat you up? So what if I want to kill you? Tan Tan immediately clutched his chest and screamed. Oh my, you scared me to death. You really scared me. Don't you know that Lord Tan has been scared since he was a child? Come on, come and beat me up. Come on, come and kill me. Suddenly, he put his hands on his hips and laughed. I'm not looking down on you. This is a battle, not a game of chess. Otherwise, I'll give you a handicap of one hand. Chu Yang finally couldn't help but spit out. Give you a handicap of one hand in chess? Don't tell me you need two hands to play chess? Lan Buhui's voice remained impassive. You said you want to have a battle to the death with me? Tan Tan picked at his nose. With a dashing flick of his fingers, a lump of booger flew out with a whoosh. There was a loud smack. A hole was actually pierced through the trunk of a large tree. Then he raised his head. See that? If Lord Tan wants to deal with you, I'm just like this tree. The muscles on Lan Buhui's face spasmed. The next moment, there was a sudden whoosh and the world turned dark. The entire sky was already completely filled with Lan Buhui's blue robes. He didn't say anything else and just attacked right away. Because he no longer wanted to speak to this fellow in front of him, not even a single word. Because this bastard, no matter what you say, he'll be able to drive you half to death. Oh yeah, you've flown into a rage out of humiliation. Tan Tan retreated in a flurry. Lan Buhui chased after him relentlessly. With a whoosh, Tan Tan went up into the sky. Lan Buhui also followed closely behind. The next moment, thousands upon thousands of Lan Buhui and thousands upon thousands of Tan Tans suddenly appeared in the sky. With a loud boom, when Chu Yang and the others clearly saw all the afterimages of the duo dissipating, their four palms came into contact with each other just like that. With a loud thud, the boundless forest below. At the place where their palms met, a crack suddenly opened up and slowly separated into two sides. Unfathomable. Then two gusts of strong wind blew violently. With a whoosh, they swept wildly to both sides. All the trees fell down neatly at this moment. High up in the sky, Lan Buhui and Tan Tan stood opposite each other with a distance of several hundred feet between them. Above their heads, the wind blew and the clouds moved. The whistling of the wind was rapid. Such a scene was like a sea suddenly changing into mulberry fields all of a sudden in this instant. Mo Tianji got to his feet. He walked over to Chu Yang and asked in a low voice, "Will Tan Tan be all right?" Chu Yang raised his head and stared at the sky. He replied in a low voice, "He just advanced today. He should be fine." Gu Duxing also got to his feet. In this short period of time, the duo's injuries had already healed. Just as Chu Yang had said, Tan Tan's original cultivation might have been slightly weaker than Lan Buhui's, but after the advancement of Chu Yang's medicinal wine, he was already neck and neck with Lan Buhui now. Moreover, he even had the most high-end abilities of the 3 Stars Divine Clan that had never been revealed before. Therefore, Chu Yang was filled with confidence in Tan Tan at this moment. "You're indeed extraordinary for spouting such arrogant words." Lan Buhui's right hand moved. With a clang, a sword appeared in his hand. His long hair and blue robes fluttered in the air, but his eyes were fixed on Tan Tan without blinking. Tan Tan snorted. "You're not bad either. But you're dead for sure today." In the battle, he had finally put away his usual glib tongue. "Dead for sure?" Lan Buhui repeated. A slight smile appeared on his face. "It's still unknown who exactly will die." When they exchanged blows earlier, he could already sense that although the other party's cultivation level was similar to his and they were both second-grade supreme martial artists, there was clearly a feeling of instability in his cultivation level. In other words, he was still a little weaker than himself. Tan Tan smiled lightly and murmured, "How many years has it been?" Suddenly, he leaped into the air again and let out a fierce cry. "Rise of the Golden Sun." Lan Buhui was taken aback. Rise of the Golden Sun? What did that mean? He seemed to have seen these 3 words somewhere before. A ball of thick black aura suddenly emerged from Tan Tan's body. The black aura spread out abruptly, filling up the space of several hundred feet in an instant and still spreading rapidly. In the blazing sun in the sky, a ray of light suddenly shot out, crossing the sky and landing on Tan Tan's body like a rainbow. It was as if this blazing ray of sunlight had been absorbed by Tan Tan's body as it poured into him continuously. Tan Tan let out another loud cry. Silver moon illumination. From another direction in the sky, a clear and cold ray of light suddenly appeared. Similarly, it crossed the sky and landed on Tan Tan's body. At the same time, Tan Tan let out another cry, thick black aura spewing out of his mouth. Flickering Star Soul. Chapter 1356. On the other hand, Ning Tianya had sped all the way that day. When he exited the passageway and saw the sunlight, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then he felt very strange. Why did I suddenly heave a sigh of relief? It seems like I've been holding this breath all this time? Then he suddenly remembered that strange-looking young man he met at the passageway. Ning Tianya clearly remembered that although he was on guard at that time, he didn't take that guy seriously. He was nothing more than a lunatic. However, once he relaxed his mind at this moment, he couldn't help but think of that person. That person's appearance suddenly became clearer in his heart. Could it be that I've been holding my breath all this time because I've been guarding against him? Could it be that this person actually gives me such a dangerous feeling? Ning Tianya couldn't help but ponder under the sunlight. He raised his head. The blazing sun in the sky shone on his face, and he felt a trace of warmth. However, this trace of warmth made Ning Tianya's heart tremble violently, as if he had remembered something. However, when Ning Tianya hurriedly and carefully thought about it, he realized that he couldn't remember anything. He shook his head and murmured, "This person is definitely extraordinary. When I return to the upper three heavens again, I must investigate carefully. For now, I'd better hurry to the lower three heavens, lest that little guy gets anxious." He started to walk as if he was flying. After arriving at the lower three heavens, he arrived at Iron Cloud Citadel in less than a morning. At present, to the lower three heavens, Ning Tianya's arrival, to put it bluntly, was like an immortal. Moreover, it was the kind of immortal king. After walking around, he didn't discover anything other than two relatively powerful auras in the palace. Ning Tianya was slightly relieved, and he casually found an inn to stay in. His divine sense was enough to cover the entire lower three heavens. Of course, he wouldn't worry about missing anything. It was the same whether he went to the palace or not. Even if he was far away, it was as if he could see it with his own eyes. However, on this day, Ning Tianya was drinking tea when he suddenly felt a vague fluctuation coming from the direction of the palace. This kind of fluctuation was very strange. Even with Ning Tianya's knowledge, he had never seen it before. He couldn't help but wonder, could there be an unparalleled genius in the palace? There's actually a fluctuation of a technique in this world that I don't understand? Moreover, this wave of energy could even trigger the purest yuan qi in the world? His curiosity was piqued, and he silently drifted over. The next moment, with a single shift, he was already right above the royal palace. After a thorough search, he finally found something. It was from the direction of the imperial flower garden. It floated over and attached itself to a flowering tree. He looked down. In the imperial flower garden, there was a small, clear pond. Inside the pond, there was a strange little tree. It had layers of branches, like layers of pagoda? That's right, this small tree was in the shape of a pagoda. The branches were densely packed, but the layers were distinct. At the edge of the pool, there was a young child wearing open-crotch pants. He was having a lot of fun as he hobbled around. What made Ning Tianya feel strange was that even though this was the imperial palace, judging from the child's attire, he should be the emperor or the son that Chu Yang was talking about, right? But why weren't there any palace maids around? Was there only this little one playing by himself? Wasn't he afraid of an accident? Ning Tianya scanned with his divine senses. The nearest palace maid seemed to be more than 100 feet away. This little distance was enough for an adult, but for a child, it was obviously not enough. The next moment, Ning Tianya's eyes suddenly widened in surprise. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. That was because the one-year-old boy had made a move. The little guy sneakily looked around. After confirming that there was no one around, he sat down on the ground. Then, he spread his two little pink legs apart and lowered his head to look at the crotch of his open-crotch pants. He even reached out to fiddle with the little snail in his pants. Then, he raised his head and sighed with a worried expression. Ning Tianya was instantly confused. What was he doing? At such a young age, he actually looked like an adult and even sighed? Looking at the little girl and sighing? What was he sighing about? He only heard the little guy muttering to himself, "Now, I'm also the emperor, but this little, my harem of 3,000 beauties." It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck Ning Tianya's head. Supreme martial artist Ning Tianya almost fell down from the tree. His breathing was interrupted at once. Just a little bit more and he would have gone mad. What did I just hear? 3,000 beauties in the harem? Oh my God. Are the children nowadays all so precocious? He's still wearing open crotch pants and he's already fantasizing about 3,000 beauties in the harem. He really deserves to be Chu Yang's son. Ning Tianya's mouth and eyes were crooked. The next moment, the little guy fiddled with the snail for a while and then stood up. He walked forward unsteadily. From the looks of it, he was actually going to walk into the pool. Ning Tianya scratched his head. Is this little guy going to jump into the water? Just as he was thinking, there was a splash. The little guy had indeed jumped in. The water splashed everywhere. Ning Tianya hurriedly held his breath and hid himself even more inconspicuously. He thought that the palace maids would definitely come immediately now that the little guy had fallen in. But after waiting for a while, no one came. Only a eunuch looked over from afar and then turned his head away again. Ning Tianya felt that his brain wasn't enough. Was this still the imperial palace? Was this still too much? How could there be such a strange imperial palace? They didn't even care when the great master fell into the water? He opened his eyes and looked over. The little guy in the water was fiddling with something. It seemed that nothing was wrong. It seemed that this kind of thing was commonplace. However, what happened next caused Ning Tianya to be inexplicably shocked at once. Moreover, he also fell into a wonderful state. He saw the little guy take a strange thing from the shore and sprinkle something on it. Then he placed this thing on the trunk of this small tree. The water in the pool suddenly started to roll. The next moment, there was a change that made Ning Tianya dumbfounded. Ning Tianya dared to guarantee that what he saw today was definitely something that no one had ever seen before. Even the supreme ruler of the heavenly imperial court might not necessarily have seen such a situation before. And at this moment in the upper three heavens, the war was in full swing. In the oldest records of the heavenly imperial court, there was a record of such an incident. The three lights of the sun, the moon and the stars merged and became invincible. Legend had it that 100,000 years ago, at a certain stage in the whole continent, it wasn't the human race that ruled, but the Three Stars Divine Clan. At that time, the demon king of the Three Stars Divine Clan had mastered the Three Stars Great Art. He could actually resist the heavenly punishment and refuse to enter the heavenly imperial court. And this demon king defeated all the low-grade supreme martial artists in the heavenly imperial court. As long as he attacked, the low-grade supreme martial artists didn't have the ability to fight back at all. If he used the Three Stars Great Art, he could even kill the low-grade supreme martial artists instantly. The Three Stars Demon King was publicly acknowledged as invincible in the heavenly imperial court. It was only after the world was turned upside down that the Three Stars Demon King suddenly disappeared. For the next 10,000 years until now, no one dared to claim to be invincible in the world. Even Ning Tianya could only claim to be the #1 expert. But he didn't dare to claim to be invincible. Now, after the three lights of the sun, the moon and the stars shone at the same time, the golden sun soared, the silver moon shone and the stars shone. It was only then that Lan Buhui's mind suddenly lit up and this answer popped up. In an instant, his soul scattered. How is that possible? How can the Three Stars Demon King possibly reappear in the world? Lan Buhui broke down and shouted, "It's already been 100,000 years. It's already been 100,000 years. Enveloped by a black fog, the star symbol on Tan Tan's forehead flashed. One moment, it was the sun shining, the next, it was the cold crescent moon, and the next, it was the brilliant starlight, getting brighter and brighter. His gaze gradually changed from its original cynicism to a dark and deep abyss, so deep that one couldn't see the bottom of it. Waves of murderous aura filled the black fog, gradually filling the entire sky. An icy laughter that seemed to have come from hell suddenly rang out strangely. The voice was still the same voice, but the sinister aura in it now was as if the gates of hell had opened and thousands of ghosts had come out. How is that not possible? I haven't been out for 100,000 years, and now, clowns are actually running rampant in the continent. People like you actually dare to claim to be invincible and challenge me. Tan Tan's voice was very indifferent, and the black fog stirred. As expected, the reincarnation of the Demon King. Lan Buhui's face was drained of all color. He suddenly withdrew and retreated fiercely, fleeing backward at lightning speed. The combination of the three lights was invincible. The reincarnation of the Demon King from 100,000 years ago. No matter how confident Lan Buhui was, he definitely wouldn't be arrogant enough to think that he was a match for him. Under such circumstances, the only thing he could do was to retreat. He already knew the secret of the tribulation. If he left now, as long as he could escape, he would be able to attack or retreat. Trying to escape? Tan Tan burst into laughter. Then, he suddenly let out a long howl. The combination of the three lights, the sun, the moon, and the stars. When murderous aura is released, 10,000 cities will be slaughtered. Low-grade supreme martial artists are like ants. When the world is slaughtered, I will be the hero. Amidst the black fog, Tan Tan suddenly took a big stride in the air and pounced down with mountain-like black clouds. He hollered, "Die!" He struck with his palm. A beam of tricolored light suddenly shot out from his palm toward Lan Buhui's back. The moment this beam of tricolored light shot out, even the sunlight in the sky seemed to dim for a moment. Lan Buhui let out a fierce roar, fleeing and turning around to block it. With a loud smack, the tricolored light struck his palm. Lan Buhui let out a wild cry. His body also suddenly emitted a strange light. Since that's the case, then let's perish together. Lan Buhui let out a long howl, his voice shrill. With a flip he charged toward Tan Tan. Tan Tan sneered. He said sinisterly, "Perish together? Just you? You're not worthy." Three lights as one. Tan Tan put his palms together and separated them. Three beams of light shot out from his palms at the same time. At this moment, the area within a radius of 50 miles suddenly turned bleak. All the plants actually withered the moment Tan Tan's three lights came as one. The three beams of light shot toward Lan Buhui like a hurricane. Ignoring his desperate palm strike, they actually charged straight into his chest just like that. Today was a very tragic day. I went out to buy something for my dad in the morning. The moment I stepped out of the building, I fell and became dizzy. I don't know which immoral person splashed a basin of water at the entrance of the building, causing me to freeze. I had just taken a step out when my foot slipped and I immediately did a standard split. Right now, I'm fucking typing with my legs spread wide apart. Even the muscles in my thighs are strained. The moment I fell, I really wanted to kill someone. Damn it. Luckily, I'm still young. If I were an old man and fell like this, wouldn't I? I tried to use a shovel to support myself, but it still wouldn't budge. I had no choice but to burn some old newspapers. Chapter 1357. Lan Buhui's hands were like blooming orchids. This was the ultimate move of the Lan clan. Orchids fly through autumn. The palm shadows turned into colorful orchids, wilting helplessly like orchids in an empty valley. Gusts of strong wind, mixed with murderous intent, rushed toward Tan Tan. The pure energy even caused the entire space to turn into a black hole. Wherever the energy went, the space shattered into pieces. The black holes were like pieces of paper that were burned to ashes and then shattered with a light touch. It was so clear that it could be seen with the naked eye. The power of a mid-grade supreme martial artist's desperate attack could be said to be earth-shattering. But Tan Tan's three beams of light ignored all the palm shadows and all the energy. Like strong winds blowing through a sparse forest, they passed through Lan Buhui's dense palm shadows and palm winds. Three beams of light as one. Invincible. The power of light was not something that formless energy like this could block at all. just like how the sun could still shine directly on the ground even though there was boundless energy between the heavens and the earth. But since Lan Buhui was clearly aware of who he was facing yet still used such a desperate move, it was naturally not to block the other party's 3 stars Dharma. It was to destroy the other party's Dharma. Your energy can be transmitted over as something like light, but your Dharma couldn't possibly be a real diamond either, right? It couldn't possibly be a void either, right? This was the true intention behind Lan Buhui's words of mutual destruction. In the instant the other party's 3 beams of light merged into one, Lan Buhui knew that he was already doomed. This demon king in front of him clearly hadn't fully awakened yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't have divided the 3 stars Dharma into 3 steps at all. It could be formed directly in a breath's time. If he had immediately attacked with all his might the moment he said the words golden sun soars, the situation definitely wouldn't have deteriorated to such a state. But when the 3 stars merged into one, even if it was Ning Tianya, he would only be able to die on the spot. Using one's own power to trigger the power of the sun, moon and stars to erupt through the Dharma was not a power that this world could contend with. Therefore, Lan Buhui's last hope was, kill me first, then I'll kill you. Mutual destruction. Tan Tan's 3 stars Dharma passed through the roaring energy flow and entered Lan Buhui's body. But at the same time, Lan Buhui's energy flowed wildly. It also reached Tan Tan. Tan Tan shouted loudly. His body suddenly spun, and all the black fog in the air gathered around him. As he spun like a top, it instantly formed a tornado that connected the heavens and the earth, using round after round of spinning to wear down Lan Buhui's desperate strength. Just as Lan Buhui had guessed, although Tan Tan could now use the secret technique to stimulate his bloodline, accelerate the awakening of his soul, and activate the 3 stars secret technique, he was still unable to do so. However, his physical body was still at the pinnacle of low-grade supreme being. Faced with Lan Buhui, who was of the same cultivation level as him, there was no way he could resolve it so easily. In the next moment, there was a loud bang. Then, Tan Tan fell from the sky like a kite with a broken string. Blood gushed out of his mouth. Chu Yang leaped up at this moment and flew high into the sky. He then hugged Tan Tan's body. The moment Tan Tan hugged Chu Yang, a violent force passed through Tan Tan's body and hit Chu Yang. Chu Yang was already prepared. He knew that even after Tan Tan had neutralized the near-death blow of a middle-grade supreme martial artist, it wasn't something that he could take on. An incomplete version of the heavy pill was already in his mouth. The violent force rushed over. Chu Yang's face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Before the force of the heavy pill could dissipate, another force rushed over from Tan Tan. The 2 brothers tumbled and fell to the ground. Gu Duxing and Mo Tianji leaped up at the same time. Then, their arms shook as if they had been electrocuted, and the 4 of them fell to the ground together. Tan Tan was in a daze from the fall. The moment he opened his mouth, he cursed loudly. Chu Yang was relieved. He felt as if another bomb had exploded in his chest. That kind of discomfort made him spit out another 2 mouthfuls of blood. Only then did he feel a little better. The force of the heavy pill began to dissipate. High up in the sky, Lan Buhui stood there motionlessly. His eyes were fixed on Tan Tan the whole time, watching as Tan Tan turned into a whirlwind, fell from the sky, and was caught. There was a look of deep disappointment in his eyes. A hint of a bitter smile floated at the corners of his lips. In front of him, a crazy hurricane swept out. Along the way, it actually plowed a straight path through the 300 miles of mountain range. A few mountains were even forcefully uprooted by the force that struck the air, tumbling backward in the sky. It was a huge commotion, as if heaven and earth had been turned upside down. The 4 brothers lay on the ground, looking at Lan Buhui high up in the sky. Chu Yang raised all his energy. If Lan Buhui still had the strength to chase after him, then the sword spirit would immediately take over his body. Tan Tan coughed and said, "It's fine. He's as good as dead now." High up in the sky, Lan Buhui's blue robes fluttered in the wind. He smiled and shook his head slightly. Chuckling softly, he said, "After 10,000 years, he still can't escape death today." He turned and looked at Mo Tianji on the ground. Sighing, he said, "You say that the Lan clan is perverse and devoid of conscience. But do you know that among the big clans, although the Shi clan is the weakest in name, in reality, it's the Lan clan? I don't have any achievements, but I strictly forbid things like destroying other people's bodies and seizing their souls for cultivation in the Lan clan. When you go to other clans, you'll realize that Tianlan City is actually heaven. You once asked me if I have any regrets in this life. I'm telling you now, I do. But if I were to start over again, I would still do everything that I've done all over again. Perhaps I might even regret it, but there are some things that I have no choice but to do. Although I've let down the common people by doing that. But, you have to know that people like us, when we climb to the top step by step, there's basically no longer a time when we can consider the common people. This is heartless and also helpless. If that day ever comes, you'll know how I feel and how I feel. Just as you said, there's no such thing as fairness in this world. Just like today, who has ever talked to me about fairness? My own father. I went to look for him myself." Lan Buhui looked up at the sky. 2 drops of sparkling tears suddenly fell from his eyes. He murmured, "Father, before you left, you stroked my head. How I wish I could feel your hand again. The warmth of that day is etched in my mind even now. I miss you so much." Lan Buhui suddenly roared madly at the sky. "Even if I can live 1,000,000 years or 10,000,000 years, I'm not willing to be a fatherless and motherless child. Do you know that I'd rather exchange these 10,000 years for just one day of being together with you? You're a tribulation, and your glory will last forever. But I'm your son. Why can I only wait for someone to destroy me 10,000 years later? Why?" His shrill voice shook the clear sky. Amidst the cries, thousands of rays of sunlight, moonlight and starlight suddenly shot out from Lan Buhui's body. His stalwart body dissipated without a trace amidst this sudden eruption of 3 stars. As if it had never appeared before. The tremors in the distance had already subsided. Silence filled the surroundings. For a long, long time, the 4 of them didn't speak. "You're a tribulation. Your glory will last forever. But I'm your son. So why can I only wait for someone to destroy me 10,000 years later? Why?" Lan Buhui's voice still seemed to be reverberating in everyone's ears. Mo Tianji sighed deeply. He said, "Lan Buhui isn't guilty of the most heinous crimes. His crime of indulgence is indeed unforgivable. However, as for himself, he can still be considered a good man." Gu Duxing took a breath and nodded. "This person, what a pity." Somewhat melancholy, Mo Tianji said, "But today, he's bound to die. He has to die." Gu Duxing nodded. Chu Yang looked rather weary. His injuries hadn't fully recovered yet. He said, "There are also good men among the enemy. Duxing, just like Tu Qianhao and Li Xiongtu whom we met 3 days ago. Which one of them isn't unyielding? However, each of them has their own standpoints. A battle is inevitable. Life and death, victory and defeat are normal things. There's no need to take them to heart. If we can't kill enemies who appreciate each other, then this world would be a lot purer." Gu Duxing and Mo Tianji couldn't help but laugh. Tan Tan waved his hands. "You guys talk. I used a little too much force just now. I seem to have strained my muscles. I'll be fine after some rest." Xie Danfeng had already run over from her hiding spot. She leaned close to Tan Tan and asked about his well-being. Chu Yang, Mo Tianji and the other 2 tactfully didn't want to be third wheels. They walked to one side. "Boss, when did you come?" Mo Tianji narrowed his eyes and asked, "What a coincidence. How can it not be?" Chu Yang rolled his eyes. "When Lan Buhui just arrived below your window, Tan Tan and I had also arrived. We've been waiting outside the whole time. I've been listening to you guys rambling on and on for almost the entire morning." Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing looked at each other speechlessly. "You came at that time?" "Why?" Chu Yang snorted and said, "If I don't let you feel the pain, how can I make you remember the lesson?" Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing both looked rather awkward. Gu Duxing stammered and said, "It's all my fault. The Tianji plan was going well, but I just couldn't accept it for a moment. Then I became somewhat dissatisfied and it almost caused us to be doomed eternally. It's my fault." Chu Yang nodded. "It's good that you know it. If brothers are dissatisfied with each other and can't accept it, that will be the source of destruction. It will eventually become a huge accident one day. This time, Tan Tan and I made it in time. But, can you guarantee that you'll have such luck every time?" The two of them lowered their heads in shame. "Also," Chu Yang's tone became heavier, "it's best that you forget the words 'don't die' in your hearts. If you keep these words in mind, even if you don't believe it, it will subtly influence your thoughts and make you careless. That way, you'll be done for. I was admitted to the hospital last night and stayed there. The doctor on duty was an old lady. Cough, she checked me and asked for the reason. She actually said thankfully, 'Thank goodness I'm not pregnant. Otherwise, I definitely have miscarried from the fall.' I exploded right then and there. I said, 'Big sister, take a closer look. Just by looking at this lump, do you think I'll have a chance of getting pregnant in this lifetime?' What did she mean by 'thank goodness I'm not pregnant'? I'm a man." I was so angry right then and there that my liver hurt. Fuck, those idiots in the doctor's office were actually laughing so hard. Did I come here in the middle of the night to be your source of amusement? Gee, what was even more tragic was that at around 11 o'clock in the morning, the Phoenix Dance Alliance master came. She first called me and asked about my ward. Then, she came in and shouted loudly the moment she entered, "Feng Ling, I heard that you pulled your testicles. I specially bought some eggs for you." I wanted to kneel down right then and there. The few people in the same ward didn't know. I tried my best to cover it up. This matter wasn't pleasant to hear, was it? If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to take leave for this matter, would I still be writing a chapter yesterday? Couldn't I have just come to the hospital directly? In the end, I really couldn't stand the pain anymore, right? I wanted to directly say, "I'm taking leave tomorrow, I can't write it. But after thinking about it, I'll just let you guys have fun. Anyway, you can't find me on the internet, right?" Now, this idiot had brought me to the ward. What was even more tragic was that there was another guy in the same ward who was 22 or 23 years old. He had broken his arm and was lying there with a cast on his arm, playing with his computer. After hearing Feng Wu's words, he immediately became excited. "Fuck, are you really conquering the world? So you really pulled your testicles? I fucking thought you were looking for an excuse to take leave." This guy's catchphrase, "fuck," was very familiar with these two words. There was no need to mention the tragedy of my brother. I really wanted to cry. I pulled my muscle, not my testicles. Who did I offend? The guy said, "Bro, don't mind it. When I have money, I'll go and read the original version." I silently cried for a while. I met a book friend who reads pirated versions. I don't want to live anymore. This chapter had been written on that guy's computer since the afternoon, and he had also used his laptop to upload it. Cuff until now. That guy eagerly said, "Bro, you said you only needed 3 hours. Now it's been 7 hours. I roared. "You can read the original version without spending money. Aren't you satisfied?" He immediately stopped talking and repeatedly apologized. Chapter 1358. Seeing the two of them drooping their heads, Chu Yang felt both angry and amused, but he also felt a sense of familiarity. All along, Mo Tianji had given Chu Yang the impression that he was a meticulous schemer and that he had the world in his heart. He had never seen him in such a sorry state. Today, Mo Tianji could be said to be in an extremely sorry state. As for Gu Duxing, he had always given Chu Yang the impression that he was calm, sharp, emotionless, lonely, decisive, and courageous. Although Gu Duxing was not an intelligent person, Chu Yang also rarely saw Gu Duxing make mistakes. But today, Gu Duxing was in the same sorry state, and he made the same mistake. And it was a fatal mistake. Seeing Gu Duxing's somewhat fearful, guilty, and uneasy expression, Chu Yang suddenly realized something. It was somewhat warm. This was the real brother of his. Mo Tianji could make mistakes, and so could Gu Duxing. Mo Tianji could think of things, and Gu Duxing could also be impulsive. This was a real person, and not a legend from his previous life. The response just now, what happened, and the final result. Chu Yang pondered and said, "What do the two of you think?" Mo Tianji's mouth twitched, and he said with a smile, "I just feel that second brother Gu is quite silly." Gu Duxing snorted and retorted, "Me too. I suddenly feel that this master of calculation and manipulation is as silly as me." Chu Yang laughed. Sometimes, the word silly only applies to us. Only our own brothers can see their own foolishness. But what outsiders see, or what we see as outsiders, are all extremely shrewd. So, this kind of foolishness in the world is the most precious. Mo Tianji and Gu Duxing looked at each other thoughtfully. Then they nodded. "Tianji, in this incident, your biggest weakness was exposed. Do you know that?" Chu Yang said. "I more or less figured it out." Mo Tianji frowned slightly. "I was a little self-righteous. Also, I relied too much on my calculation ability. Being in such a predicament has nothing to do with Duxing, wrong." Chu Yang said, "Your calculation ability is your advantage. There's no need to say anything about this. But your calculation ability needs to be reduced." "My ability to strategize needs to be reduced?" Mo Tianji didn't understand what he meant. Chu Yang said, "There's actually a reason for Duxing's dissatisfaction this time. If you continue to plan like this and care about everything, then such dissatisfaction will appear again in other people." Mo Tianji pondered. Chu Yang said, "The good thing about you is that you think in all aspects. But the bad thing is that you think in all aspects. This matter was originally done by someone else. It was the same thing. If Gu Duxing and Luo Kadi were to do it, the results might be the same, but the process would definitely be very different. In other words, everyone's thoughts and methods are different. They're all different. As for you, you can think of any aspect and control everything. But in the end, it's equivalent to everyone losing their personality, and they can only do things according to your wishes. They are like puppets, but also like chess pieces." When he said this, Mo Tianji had already completely understood. His eyes suddenly widened, and cold sweat dripped down his head. However, it seemed as if Chu Yang didn't see this. He continued to speak and insisted on explaining this principle clearly. "Don't even mention that Duxing and GMO are young and famous geniuses. Even a real fool would become impatient after being continuously assigned by you like this," Chu Yang said heavily. To Mo Tianji, these few words were like a clear path, but it was also a heavy blow. Chu Yang knew that Mo Tianji had already understood, but he still had to say it, and he still had to implement this blow to the extreme. Only when Mo Tianji was deeply hurt and made a change would the true path of the master of calculation and manipulation begin to mature. Chu Yang even thought that if the current Mo Tianji were to fight with Diwu Qingro, Mo Tianji would definitely lose. He would definitely be beaten black and blue by Diwu Qingro, and even his confidence would completely collapse and be destroyed. Mo Tianji was still too young compared to Diwu Qingro. Therefore, Chu Yang had to use strong medicine to let Mo Tianji grow up at the fastest speed. Only when the drum is loud can it be beaten with a heavy hammer. Cold sweat dripped down Mo Tianji's forehead. He lowered his head and said somewhat perplexedly, "If that's the case, wouldn't planning be useless? Only arranging for them to do something? Only looking at the results? But how can that be?" "You've walked into another misunderstanding." Chu Yang said, "Tianji, you're good at painting, so you should know about painting, right?" Mo Tianji nodded, "Yes." "Then do you know what's the most important thing about painting?" Chu Yang asked. "The power of the brush, the layout." Mo Tianji said, "Yes, your plan is so dense. If we were to draw a picture of your plan, it would be like a piece of paper that is completely filled with your drawings. But that kind of painting has no value." Mo Tianji nodded. "The layout of the painting, the balance between dense and light, is appropriate." Chu Yang said slowly, "In painting, there's a saying called white space. There's another saying called white space. Mo Tianji's eyes lit up. He already understood Chu Yang's meaning. That way, whether it's heavy or light makeup would be the best arrangement. Chu Yang knew that Mo Tianji already understood. To Mo Tianji, he only needed to say one sentence. So, he didn't give a long explanation. He only added one last sentence. When it's used to march and set up formations, it's also the best planning. I understand. Mo Tianji took a deep breath and said solemnly, "When I go back, I'll apologize to my brothers. Then, I'll try to figure out my path as soon as possible." "This is your real path?" Chu Yang laughed. Mo Tianji nodded heavily and said to Gu Duxing, "Duxing, thank you. Thank you for your dissatisfaction." Gu Duxing suddenly felt a little awkward. He was tongue-tied and shook his hands repeatedly. He was even a little confused. "I'm deeply reflecting on my mistake. How did I get thanked for this mistake in the blink of an eye? And it's from Mo Tianji? This is a little confusing." Looking at Gu Duxing's confused look, Mo Tianji and Chu Yang couldn't help but have the urge to hold their bellies and laugh. To see such an expression on Gu Duxing's face was really extreme. If it weren't for the fact that he was a little distracted due to guilt today, the two of them definitely wouldn't have seen it. At most, they would only see a stone-faced coffin-like face and hear a cold reply, "You're welcome." Right at this moment, Xie Danfeng walked over from afar. There was a wisp of black smoke over there, heading into the distance. "What's going on?" Chu Yang asked. "Why did Tan Tan leave?" Xie Danfeng sighed. He triggered the 3 stars great technique and caused the demonic nature to return. His killing intent was triggered and he couldn't control it. Now, he's heading to the Lan clan compound. He said that he wants to kill all the remaining supreme martial artists of the Lan clan. Chu Yang, Gu Duxing and Mo Tianji were all dumbfounded. Xie Danfeng said, "Actually, it's because his demonic power has returned on a large scale this time that his demonic nature has returned to an uncontrollable state. Therefore, under such circumstances, he must immediately return to the 3 stars divine clan to recover fully. But he's also worried that all of you will be in danger here, so he can only do what he can now." Chu Yang took a light breath and muttered, "Tenten, he's really given a lot of thought. There's no time to lose. Let's go and take a look immediately." The 4 of them hurriedly got up and hurried over. In the Lan clan compound. Well, actually, it couldn't be said to be the Lan clan compound anymore. It should be said to be a ruin. The 30-odd supreme martial artists had just recovered from their shock and were waiting. An aura of depression and anger was spreading. The enmity of destroying the Lan clan was absolutely irreconcilable. This enmity must be avenged. It was just that the Elder Master had told them to wait here for the time being. They could only be patient for the time being and wait for the Elder Master's reply. They had heard an earth-shattering commotion over there just now. Could it be that the Elder Master had fought with the enemy? Just as they were feeling bewildered, the sky in the distance suddenly turned dark. A black cloud flew over at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, it was already in the sky above their heads. Everyone was very puzzled. Why was this black cloud flying so fast? Then, they heard a burst of bone-chilling laughter. "You guys tell me, am I fucking handsome?" Everyone's brains short-circuited instantly. "That bastard is here again." Before they could think of how to answer, a violent gust of wind flew out from the black fog. A figure shrouded in black smoke rushed down like a tiger into a flock of sheep and started a massacre. This situation was really as if a demon had suddenly come on a demon cloud and wreaked havoc. For a moment, screams, collisions, curses, and strange laughter rang out continuously. With the ability of a mid-level supreme martial artist, it was as easy as blowing off dust to slaughter a group of injured low-level supreme martial artists who had just recovered from their shock. Outside the pavilion, by the side of the ancient path. "I'm leaving." Tan Tan seemed to be trying his best to suppress something, but there was still some kind of unsuppressible aura between his brows. "I originally wanted to go and become a monk to see Master first. But with my current situation, I can't hold on for long. I have to return to the Divine Clan immediately and do my best to merge all my memories and souls. It's really a pity that I can't fight with you guys. When you see Master, kowtow to him for me. I miss him very much. All of you must take care. Once my situation stabilizes, I will definitely send out a large number of troops to help you conquer the heavens. Tan Tan spoke in an unprecedentedly solemn tone. This kind of tone rarely appeared in Tan Tan before. Now that he heard it, Chu Yang only felt very upset. Tan Tan bade farewell to Imo Tianji and Gu Duxing with a solemn expression. Then he walked over to Chu Yang with heavy steps and reached out to hug him. Chu Yang only felt his heart heavy. You, he heard Tan Tan say to himself in a low voice, itchy, hurry up and get me a few more liters of that wine of yours. I'll drink it on the way. Also, give me a few more pieces of that souls of the purple crystal of yours. I haven't been back for a long time. This time, I have to bring something back. It's so embarrassing. In an instant, Chu Yang was dumbfounded. Then, black lines appeared all over his face as he let out an angry curse that shook the heavens. Cough, I'm home. I was even pestered by that fellow in the morning. He actually told me very honorably that many people are impersonating me. I'm famous now and I'm respectfully called Plaster Brother. I felt a strong twitch on my face right then. Cough, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's talk about serious matters. I pulled a muscle. Do you understand? If anyone fucking says that I pulled a muscle again, don't blame me for not holding back. When Feng Ling rages, the world turns upside down. I'm going to write the second chapter. Chapter 1359. Chu Yang finally felt relieved as he looked at Tan Tan and Xie Danfeng leaving behind a trail of dust. Tan Tan's recovery was developing in a good direction. This was something he was happy to see. As for the current Tianlan city, the Lan clan had already disappeared without a trace. It had completely become an ownerless place. Chu Yang was thinking about whether this place could be occupied. He looked at Imo Tianji. Imo Tianji was also deep in thought. Obviously, both of them were thinking about the same thing. This matter. Tianji, what do you think if we establish our own forces here? Chu Yang asked tentatively. It's indeed a big piece of cake. Imo Tianji pondered and said, it's a pity that with our current strength, we can't swallow it. Although it's a pity to give it up, we have no other choice. Chu Yang also sighed. He had also thought of this. But when faced with such a huge temptation as a base, Chu Yang still felt a little greedy. A base must be established, but it must not be the Chu clan. The Chu clan was his home. Chu Yang only hoped that it was a simple home and did not want it to become a battlefield. But if we establish a secret force here, it's also possible. Imo Tianji said, after 10,000 years of oppression by the Lan clan, there are many dissatisfied people in this vast area. This force can be guided. But what kind of name should we use to guide this force is a problem. Chu Yang nodded. I don't care about this. You go and settle it. The corner of Imo Tianji's mouth twitched. He knew that this would be the result. Once they discussed something, as long as he participated in the discussion, Chu Yang would definitely say, you go and settle it. The three of them strolled out. As they walked, they were thinking about things. When they walked out of the ruins of the Lan clan and onto the main street, they were suddenly shocked. Most of the houses on both sides of the street were already out of shape. Every house had a huge crack starting from the foundation. They were already dangerous houses. There were also many that had already collapsed. This was the main street of Tianlan City. The buildings here were also the most sturdy. However, under this violent impact, Yizichen was stunned. Even the sturdiest houses and the most well-preserved houses were obviously uninhabitable. The main street was filled with terrified and uneasy people. In the face of such a natural disaster, people seemed to have returned to their unevolved state millions of years ago. Only in places with the most people. Only then would he feel safe. However, the place with the most people was also the place where fear and uneasiness spread the fastest. Furthermore, it was also the place where people were most likely to become agitated and the most dangerous. Seeing Chu Yang and the other two walk out, Everyone's eyes were full of flattery and uneasiness. Many people were so scared that their bodies started to tremble. It was as if the three people in front of him were murderous demons who could eat people as they wished. The three of them remained silent. Walking along the main street, they saw more and more dilapidated houses. Mo Tianji's expression became scarily calm. It was as if it was about to condense. Chu Yang knew that Mo Tianji had this kind of expression every time. This meant that his heart was truly not calm. The desolation of the 10,000 households in front of Mo Tianji gave him a lot of pressure. On the surface, Mo Tianji often said that he would do anything by hook or by crook. Sometimes he was indeed unscrupulous. But Mo Tianji's heart would never be as unyielding as he claimed to be when he saw the destructive consequences that he had caused. Mournful cries and pleas could be heard from the front. The three of them quickened their pace. They saw a woman lying on the ground in front of a steamed bun stall. She was constantly pleading. Beside her, there was a fat man who was desperately trying to snatch something from her hands. Chu Yang looked over and saw that it was a white steamed bun. At this moment, it was already covered in dust. "Please, give me this steamed bun." The woman's mouth was bleeding profusely. Her entire body was covered in blood. She screamed as if she was about to break down. "Please, give it to me. My baby hasn't eaten for more than a day." The house suddenly collapsed. Her father and her brother were all killed. "I only have this one child left. My child hasn't eaten for a day and a night, please." Chu Yang stopped and saw that the woman's head was covered in blood. Her right arm was unnaturally twisted, but her left hand was tightly holding the steamed bun. In her arms, there was a little girl. She was hugging her broken right arm tightly. The little girl was only 3 or 4 years old. Her forehead was bruised and swollen. Her head drooped weakly as if she was dizzy. The fat man desperately tried to snatch the steamed bun. "But my family is also waiting to eat. We are also waiting to eat. In this kind of disaster, we only steamed a pot of steamed buns and it was all snatched away. How can we live? I beg you. Just let my Nanan have a bite. Just one bite. I don't want to eat." The woman begged. "Manager Li, Nanan's father was once your brother. Our families have always been on good terms. When your father passed away last year, it was Nanan's father who helped to take care of him. Beg you. Manager Li, just give me this steamed bun. Our family of 4 is so pitiful. Disaster fell from the sky overnight. Only Nan is left." The fat manager Li didn't allow it. He desperately tried to snatch the steamed bun. "What you said is all in the past. Now there is only this steamed bun left. The others have all been snatched away. Quickly give it back to me." Suddenly, he grabbed the woman's wrist and used his strength to break her fingers. The woman screamed and begged. Blood constantly spurted out from her mouth. The steamed bun was fragile. The two didn't dare to use force on it. If it was broken, there was a large group of hungry people nearby who were eyeing it covetously. The so-called etiquette, justice, integrity, loyalty, filial piety, and integrity seemed so insignificant in the face of life and death. The woman screamed. Her fingers were broken by Manager Li. The steamed bun was also in Manager Li's hand. The woman's face was full of despair. Suddenly, she threw herself on the ground and kowtowed. Manager Li, I beg you. Just give my baby a bite. Just a little bit will do." Manager Li's face was full of cruelty. He also felt a little guilty. He walked backwards. No. Suddenly, a hand fell on Manager Li's shoulder. Mo Tianji stepped forward and snatched the steamed bun from his hand. "Get lost." Manager Li still wanted to shout, but Mo Tianji slapped him on the face. He was sent flying in the air, and his teeth came out of his mouth while he was in the air. Mo Tianji held the steamed bun that was covered with blood and dust. His expression was extremely complicated. He stepped forward and gently bent down to deliver the steamed bun to the woman. The woman was still madly kowtowing. There was a banging sound. She kept on begging. Suddenly, she found a steamed bun in front of her and was stunned. Then, she happily took the steamed bun and brought it to her unconscious daughter's mouth. Perhaps it was the fragrance of the steamed bun that woke her up. The little girl slowly opened her eyes and cried, "Mommy, I'm hungry. Hungry. Mother, there are steamed buns here. Quickly eat a bite, eat a bite." The woman used all her strength to deliver the steamed bun to her daughter. However, the steamed bun was getting farther and farther away from her daughter's mouth. Blood flowed out of the woman's mouth like a fountain. Her eyes were already unfocused. She was still anxiously saying, "Eat, eat the steamed bun. I won't be hungry after eating." Chu Yang's heart ached. He suddenly felt that his eyes were a little wet. With his medical skills, naturally, he could see that this woman had already suffered a fatal injury. Her shoulder was almost broken. Several of her ribs were also broken. Some of the broken pieces had already pierced into her lungs. Her heart, most likely when the house collapsed, he should have died then. However, she held on and escaped with her daughter. She should have died a long time ago. However, she held on and hugged her daughter until now. In order to fight for her daughter's life, she used such a weak body to fight for a steamed bun with a fat man for so long. It was no wonder that the blood flowing out of her mouth was foaming. Chu Yang really did not know what kind of strength was supporting her. Her soul should have dissipated for a day, but she held on until now. Perhaps, if Mo Tianji did not help her take back the steamed bun, she would still hold on and beg until the blood of her broken heart was all gone. However, Mo Tianji took back the steamed bun. This allowed her to fulfill her wish. The little girl was crying heartbreakingly. The madam's hands slowly fell from the sky. Her unfocused eyes slowly turned. She looked at Mo Tianji. Her eyes revealed a heartbroken and desperate pleading expression. Mo Tianji only felt that his heart was fiercely hit. He could not help but feel his heart tremble violently. Facing this pitiful mother, Mo Tianji suddenly bent his legs slowly. Knelt down. A supreme martial artist, the master of calculation and manipulation, a person who could control heaven's secrets. No one, including Chu Yang, could change his way of doing things. No one could shake his heart. He only had a goal in his eyes. There was no pity. Even if there was, it would be immediately erased. He had always believed that a person who wanted to achieve great things could not be soft-hearted. As long as he succeeded, even if he had to step on thousands of bones. However, he was now shaken. He knelt humbly in front of this ordinary, dying woman. In everyone's eyes, a noble young man in a snow-white robe knelt in front of this ordinary mother in the midst of the ruins. In an instant, everyone became silent. Mo Tianji knelt upright. Then, he stretched out his hands and made an embracing gesture. The woman's unfocused eyes brightened. She suddenly desperately pushed the steamed bun and her daughter into Mo Tianji's hands. Her body was already a bit stiff, but her face was filled with gratitude and pleading. Mo Tianji's hands caught the little girl's small body. He was firm but gentle. The woman's eyes fixed on her daughter. She looked at Mo Tianji. Her fingers moved slightly. It was as if she was feeling that her daughter was no longer in her hands. She was already safe. Then she became ecstatic. She let out a ho-ho sound from her throat. She looked at Mo Tianji gratefully. Suddenly, she threw her head on the ground and heavily kowtowed. Then, her body suddenly stiffened in this posture. She was relieved. This young man's hands were so gentle when he held her daughter. He would definitely take good care of her. Therefore, she could not hold on any longer. Chapter 1360. Mo Tianji's face was calm and emotionless, but his heart was like a pot of boiling water. I am the murderer. So many people died because of me. But now, this mother thinks that I saved her daughter. Before she died, she knelt down to thank me. Her body turned into a statue as she knelt down. She was already at the end of her life. It could even be said that this was a body that had died long ago. It was supported by faith and motherly love. So once she was relieved, her body immediately stiffened. Did I do the right thing? Did I do wrong? He knelt straight and did not say a word. He only asked himself over and over again in his heart, if things were to happen again, what would I do? Chu Yang and Gu Duxing stood aside solemnly and watched. They did not make any sound. Mo Tianji's action was within their expectations. But they did not expect that Mo Tianji would use such a method. Both of them were a little shocked. Mo Tianji knelt quietly for a while. Then he slowly stood up with the little girl in his arms. He took out food from his ring and gave it to the little girl. The little girl was obviously starving. She was only 3 or 4 years old and was not very sensible. Seeing her mother lying on the ground in exhaustion, although she was sad and tears flowed down her face, she still wolfed down the dry rations in big mouthfuls. Looking at the little girl in his arms who was a little confused and naive, Mo Tianji's heart twitched. This child probably didn't know that his mother was gone forever, right? Holding the little girl, Mo Tianji turned around and said to Chu Yang, "It seems that we have to establish a force here." Chu Yang nodded in understanding. "You do it." Mo Tianji nodded. Gu Duxing suddenly said coldly, "Your plan killed so many people. Can you atone for your sins by kneeling?" Mo Tianji and Chu Yang turned their heads at the same time. Gu Duxing said, "The homes of hundreds of thousands of people were destroyed because of you. Can you atone for your sins by kneeling?" Mo Tianji took a deep breath. He said, "At least, it gave me a wake-up call. And, if things were to happen again, I would still do the same. Even now, I still regret it. I knelt because of my mother. It was not because of my guilt. I have a lot of guilt. No matter what he did, he was filled with guilt. Emperors fought for hegemony over the world. Who would have thought that there would be so many orphans and widows after the war? Since he was living in this world, this kind of thing is unavoidable. Just like a normal job, there are still several people competing for a job. Perhaps after someone loses the competition, the family will collapse because there is no source of income, or the family will be ruined. But if the person who succeeded in the competition knew about it, would he feel guilty? But if he could do it all over again, would he give up the opportunity to compete and help that person? Has anyone thought about what would happen if he gave up on his family? Mo Tianji said calmly, "I know what I'm doing. I'm the brain of tribulation. I don't know how much more blood will be spilled under my plan. I didn't know that millions of orphans and widows would be born just because of my order. But, are we just going to do nothing?" Mo Tianji took a deep breath and said, "Today's matter only reminded me of one thing. When I make a decision later," he had to think more about it. "Think about it more. Can we avoid the tragedy of some poor and pitiful people? Although I feel guilty, I don't regret it. I don't dare to regret it." Mo Tianji closed his eyes and sighed. Chu Yang also sighed. Chu Yang also sighed. He understood Mo Tianji's words the best. He had used the name of King of Hell Chu to stir up chaos in the lower 3 heavens. Millions of soldiers of Great Zhao and Iron Cloud had died a violent death. Who thought about the families of those soldiers who died? Shouldn't they? No, they didn't dare to think about it. Just like what Mo Tianji said, "I don't dare. I don't dare to regret." Even if Tai Bu Tian compensated them, who could make up for the regrets of a parent who lost their son, a son who lost his father, and a woman who lost her husband? That was something that no one could do. Mo Tianji sighed. Tragedies happen every day. What we're doing now is undoubtedly creating more tragedies. But, after we overthrow the old big clans, we can bring peace to the world for at least 2,000 years. Perhaps, this is the only thing that we can comfort ourselves with. As he spoke, Mo Tianji used his martial arts to treat the bun that was almost covered in blood. Then he put it in his ring. His expression was somewhat desolate as he said, "This steamed bun, wait for this. When Nanan grows up, I will personally give it to her. This is what her mother fought for with her life and soul. The blood on this steamed bun all flowed from her mother's heart. It is all her heart's blood." Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were dealing with the woman's corpse and looking for a place to bury it. Mo Tianji covered Darling's eyes. He sat at the side. "Duxing, what you said just now?" Chu Yang whispered. "It's nothing." Gu Duxing smiled, which was rare. Mo Tianji needs a scolding. It's most appropriate for me to scold him. If I don't scold him, he will think too much. This guy looks like a cold-blooded butcher, but if he's tempted, he'll get hurt easily. If I scold him, I'll give him the feeling that he's already been punished. Gu Duxing said, if you scold him too harshly, I'll do it. It's just right. Chu Yang said, that's good. Actually, there are many things in this world that are hard to say. Gu Duxing sighed. Although Mo Tianji defended himself, there's still a knot in his heart. If he doesn't defend himself, he'll be fine. Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, this may be a good thing for Tianji. His decisions in the past were correct and effective, but to human nature, they were undoubtedly too cold and too hard. Hopefully this time, he'll be softer. Gu Duxing nodded. Tianji has done many things in the past and killed many people, but he's never been like this. Chu Yang sighed softly but didn't say anything. Looking at Mo Tianji and little Nan Nan paying their respects in front of a new grave, Chu Yang and Gu Duxing were speechless. They also followed suit and paid their respects. This woman. She was very ordinary and ordinary. But what she did for her daughter. She was worthy of the worship of any so-called great person in the world. I want to recruit people to do some things for this city. Mo Tianji looked at the desolation. He said softly, if this city can be rebuilt, I hope it'll be called Mother City. Mo Tianji immediately got to work. It was really too easy to recruit people in such a ruined city. Moreover, it was so easy that it was unbelievable. As long as there was food to eat and clothes to wear, just by setting up a flag and separating 4 big countries, the crowd would swarm over. There were also many martial artists. Mo Tianji's actions were swift and decisive. He immediately assigned people and then sorted out the people who came. The old, weak, sick, women and women were in one group, the strong men in another group, and the martial artists in another group. Then, he began to save the dying and heal the injured in Tianlan City. I want to make this city no tragedy. Let all the orphans have food to eat. Mo Tianji's voice was sonorous and powerful. Although Tianlan City was in ruins, the Lan clan's wealth was still there, excluding some heavenly treasures and some rare resources. The rest was used by Mo Tianji to rebuild Tianlan City. The speed was extremely fast. Slowly, a few small clans that were originally affiliated to the Lan clan also joined in. This made this work completely on the right track within 3 days. Mo Tianji had been in charge of the overall situation and delegating commands. Everything was orderly. Although this kind of thing was trivial, to Mo Tianji, it was really a waste of talent. Chu Yang kept watching Mo Tianji busy but didn't say anything. He knew that blowing up the Lan clan this time wasn't a big deal to Mo Tianji at all. However, that mother's struggle for her life was a heavy blow to Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji needed to recover. And after this incident, what kind of changes would Mo Tianji have? That would also be the beginning of Mo Tianji's true path as a wise man, right? Little Nan Nan's surname was Yun. Mo Tianji named her Yun Niancy to remind her not to forget the kindness of her loving mother and to properly settle her down. Mo Tianji decided that when he settled down, he would bring little Niancy by his side and raise her. That broken arm bone, that desperate and pleading gaze, that bloody foam gushing out of her mouth would definitely become a mark that Mo Tianji would never be able to erase in his life. In the middle of the night, Chu Yang once heard Mo Tianji muttering to himself. In the world, the most moving thing is love. In the world of love, the most moving thing is love. In the lower 3 heavens, Ning Tianya was watching with his eyes wide open. The little guy in front of him had erected a bridge-like thing from the water and placed it on that tree. Then, he took something out of nowhere and placed it in the water. After a faintly discernible mist, Ning Tianya felt that some changes had happened to this pool. However, he couldn't pinpoint exactly what the changes were. In the next moment, every piece of this strange little tree unfolded. Every piece of tree was the size of a finger and was oval in shape. One layer after another, countless layers all the way to the top. Then, a gush of water surged and suddenly rushed up the bridge. Something seemed to be condensing in the water. The moment it rushed up the bridge, It was still gathering. Finally, a small, sparkling and translucent pearl suddenly formed. Then, the water rushed forward toward this pearl. As it rushed forward, more and more pearls appeared along the way. Slowly, they became densely packed together. They rushed all the way to the bottom of the tree. Then, they actually started to climb up the tree. The water kept urging them from behind. Countless pearls rushed up the tree uncontrollably. Some rushed up to the first layer of the tree and stopped. Some rushed up to the second layer, the third layer. Some rushed all the way up to the 40th or 50th layer. Those who stayed on the tree stayed there. And those who didn't stay still followed the water and rushed up. It was very difficult to write. I overturned the manuscript many times. This chapter was exhausting. I let Mo Tianji explain and let him understand. I can't explain it clearly. I don't understand how complicated my feelings are. I thought of many things. Right and wrong, meritorious and sinful people often belong to the same body. I wanted to say a lot. I just typed a long paragraph and silently deleted it. Sigh, I'll leave it at that for this chapter. Let me explain. Nan Nan is a general name for little girls in many parts of our country. It is mostly used for girls in the infant stage. It doesn't refer to a girl's name. It's just like how some little boys are called little shotas now. I saw that many people in the book review section were conflicted. They said that many books used this name. I'll explain it here. Gee, today I'll update. Chapter 1361. Ning Tianya didn't understand and kept watching. He seemed to have sensed some kind of artistic conception, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Moreover, with Ning Tianya's knowledge, he actually didn't know what the little tree in the pond was called. He didn't even know what those little pearls were. To be able to stand out from the water just like that and turn into pearls. Moreover, it seemed to be mixed with something else. Ning Tianya had never seen any of these things before. Where did this little brat get such strange things from? He saw that this fair and delicate child actually had a solemn look on his face at this moment. Sitting in the water with his butt bare, his expression was solemn and serene. His chubby little hands, which still had pits in them, made a series of strange gestures, and then he dazzlingly retracted them at his navel. An inexplicable energy surged out from his little body and entered the water. Then, the water rippled and waves of snow-white waves hit the bridge. Little round pearls appeared again and were driven by the waves to climb up the tree. The first layer, the second layer, the third layer, Ning Tianya finally counted clearly. There were a total of 10 layers on this tree. The higher it went, the fewer trees there were. At the very top, there was only a stretch of trees. Now, many pearls were climbing up, but most of them stopped at the first or second layer, piling up thickly. Ning Tianya discovered that it wasn't according to the rule of first come, first served. Instead, some of the pearls that surged up to the first layer would also gradually rise to the second and third layers, and many of the pearls that appeared later also entered the first layer. Slowly, the pearls jumped, and the first pearl appeared on the 10th layer. The path of this pearl was so difficult. It tumbled and crashed all the way, trekking over mountains and rivers. Ning Tianya was actually stunned. A thought suddenly welled up in his heart. Among these pearls, are there any that can go up to the 10th layer? At this moment, the pearls on the first and second layers. They had already started to fall, dripping from the tree and entering the water. The moment they entered the water, the pearls immediately dissolved and turned into clear water. Then, the water flowed back to the path and was washed up by the rolling waves. They formed pearls again. And rolled forward again and again. That little person was in the process of those pearls appearing and disappearing in the rolling waves. He sat there seriously as if he was practicing martial arts. As for Ning Tianya, he suddenly had a kind of enlightenment. Or a clear understanding. This realization made him shudder. Then he fell into a strange state. He finally realized that wasn't this tree equivalent to a world? Wouldn't these 10 layers of the tree be equivalent to the various levels of a human? And those little pearls that came from nothing, disappeared, and then reappeared again and again, weren't they the same as people? Could the pool below be the great river of samsara? And that bridge, was it the bridge of rebirth? A single person had transformed from the river of samsara into chaos. Then he would transform into the purest soul and enter the bridge of rebirth to begin a new life and a new cycle of reincarnation. When they entered this world, everyone was on the first level. Then, as they struggled, some people reached the second level. Then he reached the third floor. Everyone was struggling. Some people struggled their entire lives to be at the bottom, so they eventually fell from the bottom. It turned into nothingness. As for some experts, they reached the third level, the fifth level, and even the 10th level. But their lives will come to an end. And once they reached a certain limit, if they couldn't climb to the next level, they would also fall into the great river of samsara. There was no difference. Only a few people who were especially persistent would continue to climb and surpass them, one level after another. But where was the end? Was it on these 10 layers? Ning Tianya held his breath and watched. Now, as the water continued to flow, more and more pearls appeared. Gradually, it reached a certain number and didn't increase anymore. At every moment, countless pearls fell from the tree and shattered, but there were also countless pearls that surged into the tree, jumping and rolling forward. Entering and exiting were basically equal. It maintained a rather stable state. The number of pearls on the upper layer was gradually increasing. Although it was so difficult to add one more pearl, it was still increasing slowly. There were 5 out of the 10 layers. Then one of them suddenly jumped and went up to the 11th layer. Ning Tianya's heart skipped a beat. It was as if he had jumped from 8th grade supreme martial artist to 2nd grade supreme martial artist. There was another pearl that was also jumping forward with the flow of the water, but it missed and fell from the 10th layer into the pool, turning into powder. Ning Tianya suddenly felt a sense of sadness. Ning Tianya had seen this pearl that had jumped from the lowest layer to the 10th layer with difficulty. It was a disaster at every step, but it fell down here. The water continued to flow and the pearls continued to roll. At every layer, there were conflicts and accumulations, just like all kinds of battles in the world. Some were borrowing force to exert force, some were moving flowers to replace trees, some were colliding left and right, some were going up and down, and some were stepping on others to jump up. In short, they were all trying their best to fight for opportunities for themselves, trying their best to fight for a future for themselves, and trying their best to fight for more time for themselves. Finally, there were pearls that jumped up to the 13th layer, 70th layer. Wherever the pearls went, the water would also follow. As long as the first one went up to a new layer, then the others behind would jump up one after another. The higher they went, the fewer pearls there were. Finally, they reached the 10th layer. The pearls on this layer seemed to have reached a bottleneck. More and more pearls came up, but none of them could go up to the 11th layer. Therefore, on this lofty 10th layer, these pearls began to fight, and collide with each other again. Then, countless pearls fell from the high 10th layer. After a long time, these 10th layer actually became like the first layer, and then new jumps began, 11th, 12th, all the way to the 18th layer. They began to gather, fight, work hard, and struggle again. Then, finally, a pearl suddenly jumped up to the 10th layer. The 10th layer. There was only one tree that could accommodate one pearl. New pearls jumped up, but were knocked down by the original pearl. New pearls were knocked down again, but this one that was always on top, although it was only by itself, was also jumping toward the endless void. It seemed to be still exploring. Was there a new layer above it? Finally, at that moment, the pearl leaped high into the air. But it did not land back on the tree. Instead, it deviated from its direction and fell from the 10th layer. It fell into the pool. At this moment, Ning Tianya's heart was simply heavily shocked. It turned out that one would also fall after reaching the 10th layer. Then, the process continued. Finally, the little guy seemed to have stopped. He put down his hand with a tired look on his face. Then, he took a deep breath. All the pearls suddenly fell into the pool and disappeared. The waves calmed down. That strange bridge also disappeared. This small tree in the pool. It also returned to its original inconspicuous appearance. The little fellow heaved a sigh of relief and walked onto the shore with his butt bare. His little butt swayed and nodded continuously. He looked at it for a while with some self-pity and said, "Sigh, it's finally another cycle?" It's so hard. Ning Tianya's heart skipped a beat. He was indeed practicing martial arts. What kind of martial arts was this? This kind of divine martial arts was actually practiced with a world as the prototype? Letting the person practicing martial arts drift away from the world? Or the whole world? Was it all under the control of the person practicing martial arts? At the thought of this, Ning Tianya suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He was just coldly watching the rise and fall of all living things while practicing martial arts himself. Then, the little brat put on his open crotch pants and swaggered away. That tree was actually left in the pool? Ning Tianya was a little moved at once. With his own knowledge. What kind of flowers and trees on this continent didn't he know? But he had never seen such a tree. It must be extraordinary. Of course. Ning Tianya wasn't so greedy as to covet a little kid's things. He just wanted to study it. Seeing that there was no one around, Ning Tianya floated down from the tree like a wisp of smoke. The next moment he was already at the side of the pool. Tilting his head, he looked at this strange little tree. It was now standing quietly at the pool, motionless. Every piece of it was needle-shaped, like a pine tree. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes just now, he really wouldn't have believed that this tree could actually have such a change. Ning Tianya waved his hand and that tree automatically came to the side of the pool. Ning Tianya reached out and gently stroked the tree. He didn't find anything unusual. Therefore, he wanted to pull down a piece of the tree to take a look. But when he used his strength, he felt a piercing pain on his fingertips. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. With his current cultivation, not to mention a tree, even a divine weapon that could cut iron like mud and a supreme martial artist might not be able to cut through his skin with all his strength. But now, it was actually pierced by a small piece of tree? And it was when he was activating his divine technique. This was practically inconceivable. Ning Tianya was still in shock when something even more inconceivable happened. Ning Tianya found that he couldn't move at all. This matter was laughable. A second-grade supreme martial artist, who was already qualified enough to go up to the heavenly imperial court, was pierced by a tree in the lower three heavens. Then, his whole body was paralyzed and he couldn't even blink his eyes. Supreme martial artist Ning sat down on the ground miserably. With his eyes wide open, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry and assumed a rather comical posture. He didn't move at all. "There's a thief," a childish voice shouted. "He's stealing my tree." It was the voice of that little boy just now. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A figure flew over at once, extremely fast. A strange voice said respectfully, "Greetings, great master. I'll deal with this audacious fellow right away." Ning Tianya felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Then, another person came. He heard someone coming from afar. Everyone knelt down together. "Your Majesty!" Then, that strange eunuch voice began to report this matter. A bright yellow silhouette took 2 steps forward. It seemed as if he was observing Ning Tianya. Then, a dignified voice faintly resounded, "Puny little thief! Push him out and behead him." Chapter 1362. In that instant, Ning Tianya felt as if he was struck by lightning. He was very clear about his body's current condition. Right now, he couldn't use any strength at all. It could be said that his head would be chopped off by an ordinary knife. In that case, he would become the first low-grade supreme martial artist to be beheaded in this world? Being tied up and beheaded? At the thought of this, Ning Tianya almost fainted. Even if he had long seen through life and death, but he couldn't die like this. It was too embarrassing and too aggrieving. Ning Tianya's eyes darted around desperately, but he didn't have any strength at all, let alone the ability to speak. 2 guards rushed up like wolves and tigers. They took out a hemp rope and tied great supreme martial artist Ning up, hanging him upside down. With a puff, a piece of rag was stuffed into his mouth. At this moment, Ning Tianya's mood was really very strange. Could it be that this old man came down in such a hurry just to be beheaded at this moment? Tai Budian waved her hand, indicating for him to be escorted out. Feng Qiliang's eyes darted around. He took a step forward and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, for this old man to be able to sneak into the palace without anyone noticing, he's obviously not someone to be trifled with. I'm worried that, could he be, from the higher-ups?" Tai Butian's gaze hardened. Feng Qiliang said carefully, "If your Majesty doesn't mind, you can hand this old man over to me. I'll definitely make him say whatever he wants to say, and serve him until he's comfortable." Tai Budian frowned and said, "All right, bring him back for interrogation. If it's really him, then I'll hand him over to you." Feng Qiliang happily bowed. "Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty. I'll definitely do my best." After he finished speaking, he fiercely kicked Ning Tianya's buttocks and said, "Everyone, send this old fart to my room. I want to properly deal with this old fart. What kind of confidence does he have? He actually dares to behave atrociously in the palace? Black smoke is really rising from his ancestral graves. How would the guards know who this chief manager Feng was?" Seeing this wretched look, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. They couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Falling into your hands is the real shame of this old thing's ancestral grave. Tai Budian frowned and said, "Qinyang, don't make it too disgusting." Feng Qiliang nodded and bowed. "This servant obeys the imperial edict." As he spoke, he followed the instructions and carried Ning Tianya away. Along the way, he rubbed his fists and grinned evilly. Of course, Qinyang definitely didn't know what kind of trash she was carrying back. If she really knew that this old bastard was actually the #1 expert of the heavenly layer, Ning Tianya, Feng Qiliang would probably be so scared that he wet himself on the spot. Unfortunately, he didn't know. Of course, Ning Tianya also heaved a sigh of relief. Now, he could already feel that the internal energy in his dantian was starting to move slowly. After all, there was no one in the world who could really paralyze a peak-grade supreme martial artist and make him unable to move for a long time. Being able to numb him for such a short period of time was already unexpected. Since he wasn't going to be beheaded on the spot, Ning Tianya wasn't afraid. However, he secretly gritted his teeth. "This damn eunuch is so wretched and disgusting. He even kicked my butt. How could this be tolerated? The butt of the #1 expert in the world, who was at the peak of middle-grade supreme martial artist. Is it something a eunuch like you can kick? You must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall. I'd like to see how you're going to deal with me." Feng Qiliang didn't think so. Although he said it casually, he was certain that this old bastard must be the experts of the Lan clan. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for there to be such a person in the lower 3 heavens. To be able to sneak into the palace without his surveillance. This matter was of great importance. He had to pry open this old bastard's mouth at the first instant to see how many people the Lan clan had sent and who was leading the team. What were their plans? Was it to kill or plunder? If so, how should he deal with it? What about the emperor? What about the emperor? How could he get out of this disaster? In the eyes of Feng Qiliang, these were all urgent problems. Therefore, he carried Ning Tianya into his room and threw him on the ground. He waved his hand to order the guards to leave and prepared to start the interrogation. "Old bastard, I know your background." Feng Qiliang said coldly, "Don't think that just because you don't talk, I can't find out where you're from. Hurry up and tell me the truth so that we can have fun together." As he spoke, he pulled down the rag on Ning Tianya's mouth, bent down and asked very oppressively. Ning Tianya widened his eyes but still couldn't speak. Feng Qiliang snorted and thought to himself, "That tree of the little ancestor is an obvious trap. I've fallen into it once and was paralyzed for a whole day. This time, it seems that this old bastard also needs a whole day, right?" However, he didn't have that much time. Rolling his eyes, he grabbed a jar of wine and opened the mud seal with a bang. He put on a fake smile and said, "Old bastard, you fucking reached the point where I'll feed you wine personally." Alcohol would flow through the blood vessels. With the blood boiling, one would gradually be able to move. At the very least, it could dilute the anesthetic. This was common knowledge. He grabbed Supremacy Ning's chin roughly with one hand and forced his mouth open. Then, a jar of wine was poured into his mouth. The effect was very obvious. Ning Tianya originally lacked a little external force. Once the wine entered his stomach, the power of the wine immediately flowed through his meridians. In an instant, the primordial qi that was sealed in his dantian burst out like a flood and flowed through his whole body, recovering instantly. Feng Qiliang rubbed his chin and smiled sinisterly. "Old bastard, I see that your eyes have become more agile and your tongue can move. Don't lie to me that you still can't speak, hee. You'd better be sensible and behave yourself. Otherwise, there are many guards in this palace who like you." Ning Tianya looked at him strangely and said hoarsely, "What do you want me to say?" Feng Qiliang laughed and snapped his fingers. "You can indeed speak. Come, tell me the purpose of your visit. If you're straightforward, I can still give you." Ning Tianya looked at him strangely. Feng Qiliang went up to him proudly. "Be sensible. You're now a little white rabbit in the hands of a big bad wolf." Before he finished his words, he was suddenly dumbfounded. He saw that the little white rabbit in the hands of a big bad wolf suddenly had a strange look in his eyes. Then he gently pulled his hands outwards and the thick hemp rope on his body suddenly broke into pieces. "Fuck. He's an expert." Feng Qiliang was shocked and grabbed over with his hands like an eagle's claws. He who strikes first gains the upper hand. He didn't know what was going on. Feng Qiliang realized that his hands were grabbed by the other party and then half of his body couldn't move. Then there was a loud slap. A loud sound, but his face was fiercely slapped. "Damn eunuch!" Supremacy Ning scolded in a low voice angrily. "You've got guts. You even know that you're a little white rabbit." Feng Qiliang was already stunned. At this moment, it was too late for regrets. He had thought that he was a big bad wolf who had caught a little white rabbit in its nest. Who would have thought that he was a little white rabbit who had caught a big bad wolf who was full of vigor? After a series of slaps, Supremacy Ning then started to ask about the matter. However, although General Manager Feng's martial arts were not as good as Supremacy Ning's, his bones were extremely tough and he actually resisted to death. This made Ning Tianya very angry. This guy was also on Chu Yang's side. He couldn't really beat him to death, right? "I'm here to help you." Ning Tianya roared angrily, only feeling extremely conflicted. "And it was Chu Yang who begged me that I came." "You bunch of bastards." Supremacy Ning felt extremely wronged. "You actually used a child to set up such a sinister trap. You tricked me." These few words exploded on Feng Qiliang's head like thunder in spring. He felt a wave of dizziness. Just from this sentence alone, it could be proved, because Ning Tianya had pointed out Chu Yang right from the start. And Lan's family. They didn't know Chu Yang. Feng Qiliang was like a duck that had been shocked silly by lightning. He stammered, "This? Do you know?" Ning Tianya snorted angrily and gritted his teeth. "That little bastard. You're Chu Yang's son, right? That emperor who wants to behead me is the woman that bastard Chu Yang hooked up with, right? What else do you have to say?" Feng Qiliang became well-behaved at once. If even this point was pointed out, then it definitely couldn't be wrong. He groaned and asked, "May I know Elder's name?" Ning Tianya glared. "I'm Ning." At this point, he suddenly shut up and roared angrily out of humiliation, "Don't tell me you still want to know my name and then use this matter to make fun of me?" Feng Qiliang was also conflicted. "If you don't say your name, how can I introduce you to Her Majesty?" Ning Tianya was stunned and said in a voice that he couldn't bear to recall, "I'm Ning Tianya." As he spoke, he almost wanted to bang his head against the wall. Bam! Feng Qiliang sat down on the ground, already dizzy and disoriented. His eyes widened, almost popping out of their sockets. His lips trembled and his whole body trembled. He said agitatedly as if he had seen a deity, "You're Ning Tianya? Supremacy Ning? Elder Ning?" Ning Tianya nodded speechlessly and heaved a long sigh. "Today, my illustrious reputation is destroyed in a day." With a poof, Feng Qiliang fell to the ground, twitching all over. He was so agitated that he wanted to die. My god. It's Ning Tianya. My god, I kicked Ning Tianya's butt. My god. With a bam, Ning Tianya kicked his butt hard. You'd better forget about this or else. Humph, humph, humph. Feng Qiliang nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking at rice. What's your name? Ning Tianya asked, conflicted. I'm Feng Qiliang. Feng Qiliang trembled with fear. Elder Ning can call me. Qinyang, are you really a eunuch? Ning Tianya asked, holding on to a glimmer of hope. After all, being kicked in the butt by a eunuch was definitely different from being kicked in the butt by a normal person. Feng Qiliang nodded miserably. For now, this matter is really hard to explain. Hard to explain. Ning Tianya's face contorted. A moment later, Chief Steward Feng, whose face was bruised and swollen, appeared in front of Tai Budian with Ning Tianya in high spirits. And second update. I'll continue to write and catch up on the chapters. Gee, today, I went out and entrusted the New Year shopping and other matters to my cousin. It's a custom in the countryside here. Every big clan collectively slaughters pigs and goats, and then each family lines up to collect them. Then, the family dinner lasts for a few days. But this year, my father's health is not good, so he can't go. As for me, I obviously have to dedicate my time to everyone. If my wife goes, it's naturally even more inappropriate. So, I specially invited my cousin to a table today to handle this matter. Then, I'll seize the time to catch up on the chapters and explode a few more times. Then, I'll prepare for the new year with everyone. Just thinking about the new year makes me excited. I can set off firecrackers again. Chapter 1363. Tai Budian was shocked to find out that the old man in front of her was actually the #1 expert in the world, Ning Tianya. Although Ning Tianya looked calm and composed on the surface, he was also extremely embarrassed in his heart. After all, this was a little too comical. He was here to help someone, but he was knocked out by a 1-year-old child instead. Not to mention Ning Tianya, even if the Saint Tianke was here, he would probably be too ashamed to show his face. But Tai Budian only used one sentence to resolve Ning Tianya's embarrassment. If there really is happiness in this world, then I have it now. Thank you, Senior Ning. Ning Tianya was the most embarrassed, but he was also moved by this sentence. Because Ning Tianya was invited by Chu Yang. As a woman who had been separated from her beloved for a long time, receiving help from her beloved at the most difficult time was a great blessing to Tai Budian. Ning Tianya's arrival meant that there was nothing wrong. Then, it also guaranteed Tai Budian's happiness in the future. Like a stabilizing needle, Ning Tianya's arrival was absolutely uplifting. Tai Budian used such a tactful method to express her joy and satisfaction. Ning Tianya needed to think before he could understand. And it was in this time of thinking that all his embarrassment was blown away by the wind just like that. And, to a certain extent, it also resolved some of the hostility in Ning Tianya's heart. After all, the empress in front of him was his disciple's love rival. But now, there was no empress in front of Ning Tianya, only an ordinary woman who felt extremely happy because of a little concern from her beloved. Since I am here today, I will naturally not let Chu Yang down. Ning Tianya smiled and said, I will do my best to ensure the safety of your Majesty's mother. Although Ning Tianya was very confident, he still didn't say everything. Tai Budian said seriously, if Senior Ning is confident, please, protect the safety of the people of the lower 3 heavens. This storm arose because of Chu Yang, because of me. I don't want anyone in this world to suffer because of this. Suffer. Since I ascended the throne, the world is at peace and there is no trouble in the world. The people are recuperating and the suffering of the war a few years ago has already recovered slightly in these few years. Currently, the people were living in peace. However, this kind of happiness was not easy to come by and was very fragile. If there was a huge battle at this time, or if there was an earth-shattering battle between experts, it would definitely cast a shadow over the hearts of the people, and they might even be hurt. So, I'll have to trouble Senior Ning. Ning Tianya sighed and said, of course. At this moment, Ning Tianya actually felt some admiration for this female emperor. It was rare for him to experience such moments. But this time, it was because of Tai Butian's magnanimity. In the eyes of ordinary people, if someone knew the inside story, they would definitely think, your husband is the master of Calamity Sword, who soars above the sky. As long as you follow me, you will have endless glory, splendor, wealth, and power. Compared to the power of life and death held by the gods in the sky, the imperial power of the secular world was incomparable. They simply couldn't be compared. After all, in the eyes of the strong, the common people of the world were just ants. However, Tai Butian was a woman. She scrupulously abided by her duty and relied on her own strength to seek happiness for the people of the world. This responsibility was not something that could be easily thrown away. Ning Tianya had already been in the lower three heavens for a few days. But everywhere he went, everyone was full of praise for this emperor. Wise words could be heard incessantly. This was the most honest evaluation from the people at the bottom of the world. Such an emperor was rare since ancient times. What's more, this emperor was even a woman. Ning Tianya said softly, "When this matter is over, your majesty can accompany little brother Chu Yang to roam the world and laugh proudly at the heavens. Wouldn't that be great?" Tai Butian's gaze was somewhat misty and yearning. But then she took a deep breath and said softly, "Responsibility lies in the heart and shoulders. Everyone has their own responsibilities." She smiled lightly. In the eyes of the supreme martial artists, or the so-called immortals and saints in the secular world, the common people of the world are just ants. They don't take them seriously at all. But which saint or deity in the world didn't evolve from the body of an ant? No matter where you are, if you forget your ant origins, even if you are the ruler of the heavens, I can also say that you have forgotten your roots. And what right do people who have forgotten their roots have to talk about the great Tao? If one can ignore the suffering of the world after becoming immortals and saints, then what's the use of becoming immortals and saints? Chu Yang has Chu Yang's mission, and I also have my responsibilities. Tai Butian looked at the mountains and rivers outside the Great Hall and said slowly, "My responsibilities are these mountains and rivers, and the people of this world. Even an ant has an ant's happiness. They also have the right to be happy. If others can't bring them happiness, then my responsibilities will always be on my shoulders." Emperors don't discriminate between men and women. They only care about political affairs. I am the emperor. Being the emperor is a job, not an honor. As a woman, you can't be the best. But as an emperor, it's not something that can be given up easily. Just closing one's eyes can cause millions of people to suffer unspeakably. Just slacking off can cause millions of people to be in poverty. Tai Butian's eyes dimmed for a moment. She said, "Others may be a woman first and then have other identities, but I have to be an emperor first before I can talk about being a woman." Ning Tianya stopped talking. Tai Butian's words were from the bottom of her heart. In front of people like Ning Tianya, there was no way to fake it. Ning Tianya could feel every single word that wasn't said from the bottom of her heart. But all the way until Tai Butian finished speaking, Ning Tianya only felt absolute sincerity. Supremacy Ning couldn't help but let out a long sigh in his heart. He really didn't know what kind of luck Chu Yang had to have such an extraordinary woman fall in love with him. Such a woman made Ning Tianya speechless. Ning Tianya only rejoiced in his heart. If his disciple competed fairly with her, he might really lose. After a moment of silence, even Ning Tianya didn't know why he suddenly said, "Chu Yang's woman is my disciple, my only brother." Tai Butian didn't seem surprised. She just smiled. "Elder, what do you mean?" Actually, Ning Tianya already wanted to slap himself when he said that. He was even more speechless now. Chu Yang already has someone he loves. I've long known about it, so I've always kept my feelings a secret. Tai Butian seemed to be explaining something. She laughed bitterly and said, "I don't like to fight with others, nor do I like others to fight with me." If he hadn't been poisoned back then, he would never have known about my identity. After that, I found out that I was pregnant. Tai Budian pursed her lips and said, "At that time, I even wanted to use the palace's secret prescription to abort the child. I didn't want to be a burden to him, nor did I want to give him a reason to accept me, but I'm still a woman after all. I'm still selfish." Tai Budian said self-deprecatingly, "Firstly, I can't bear to have a child with a man I approve of. Secondly, as a mother, I can't bear to. Iron Cloud also needs an heir. Among the direct descendants of the Iron Cloud royal family, I'm the only one left. If I don't have an heir, it will definitely end here. Elder can't possibly think that I, Tai Budian, am the kind of woman who can have a child with any random man." Tai Budian smiled mockingly and then said seriously, "So, even if I'm scolded for being shameless because of this, I have no regrets. No woman would kill her own flesh and blood just because someone else scolded her for being shameless. Even if I've caused harm to your disciple, I can only say sorry." Tai Budian laughed softly. "Actually, your disciple is also one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to the upper three heavens to accompany Chu Yang. As women, we all understand each other. It's very difficult for me to face my guilt towards her, especially when we're face to face. I can still deceive myself and comfort myself here, but it..." Tai Budian said heavily, somewhat dejectedly. Ning Tianya finally had nothing to say. Towards such a woman, even though he was still dissatisfied and even hostile when he came down, his heart was full of admiration at this moment. As a woman, she was flawless. As an emperor, she was invincible and also the most qualified. As a human, she was still a success. Ning Tianya heaved a long sigh and said sincerely, "The emperor's name is Budian. No wonder he can really nourish the heavens." Tai Budian was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you for your compliment, elder." Ning Tianya stood up and said, "I want to go and see little madam. Your Majesty, please allow me." Tai Budian nodded and smiled. "Elder Ning, please go ahead. In my Iron Cloud, Elder Ning can go anywhere you want." Ning Tianya left with a smile, but he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. These few words kept echoing in Ning Tianya's heart. Which saint or deity didn't evolve from this insignificant body? No matter what stage you've reached, if you forget your insignificant origin, even if you're the ruler of the heavens, I can also say that you've forgotten your roots. And what right do people who have forgotten their roots have to talk about the great Tao? If becoming a deity or a saint means that one can ignore the suffering of the world, then what's the use of becoming a deity or a saint? In Ning Tianya's heart, these words were like the rolling thunder of the evening drum and morning bell, reverberating unceasingly. Every time, he seemed to have a new kind of understanding. When he thought of that little child, that tree, that strange world, Ning Tianya's heart had another layer of understanding. I, Ning Tianya, have been stuck at this bottleneck for more than 10,000 years. Now that I've accepted someone else's commission to come to the lower three heavens, I've instead obtained something that I've never even dreamed of before in this lower three heavens that I've never taken a proper look at before. In the past, I was only worried that there was no path in front of me. But now, in this lower three heavens, everyone has actually pointed out a path for me. From having no path at all, it suddenly became two paths and became a fork in the road. Ning Tianya shook his head and laughed. This is really unexpected. However, the secret on that little fellow is even bigger. My gains from coming to the lower three heavens this time are too great. Chapter 1364. When Ning Tianya saw the little fellow was busy. He was looking at a black and white ball hanging in front of him, deep in thought like an adult. He was wearing open-crotch pants and had a bold and unrestrained posture. He was sitting on the horse with his back bent and his eyes looking straight ahead. In front of him, that black and white ball was hanging and swinging. Below his crotch, there was also a small lump hanging and swinging. Although the little fellow's face was very colorful, this kind of situation really made it hard for anyone to be serious. Although Ning Tianya was a little conflicted, he couldn't help but want to laugh. He held it in and walked over in front of the little fellow. Cough, little bastard. Ning Tianya was furious. He walked back and forth in front of him several times, but this fellow actually ignored him. Sure. The little fellow raised a finger. He signaled him not to speak. Ning Tianya froze at once. The little fellow reached out and pointed to the side unquestionably. He shouted, "Stand aside and don't make a sound." Ning Tianya's eyes widened. He only felt that his eyes were about to pop out. Suddenly, there was a puff. Ning Tianya held his breath at once, his expression strange. The little fellow sighed. Why do I have to fart every day when I'm young? Although this kind of smell isn't very unpleasant to me, it's still very embarrassing when there are outsiders around. Ning Tianya's expression became even stranger at once, as if he had swallowed a fart alive. To be honest, although the fart just now was a little smelly, Ning Tianya could still bear it. However, this sentence was really somewhat unbearable for Ning Tianya. What are you doing? Ning Tianya had no choice but to ask seriously. The little fellow had a deep look on his face. Ning Tianya followed his gaze and shook his head blankly. Look, the little fellow said mysteriously, isn't this very vivid? Ning Tianya frowned. He tried his best to think from the perspective of Tao, but he realized, where did this image come from? So he shook his head in puzzlement. The little fellow looked at him very discontentedly. Isn't this very much like a ball? Ning Tianya suddenly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then, white smoke violently billowed. Like a ball? What I want to do the most right now is to kick you out like a ball. That's a fucking ball to begin with. It's a ball. The little guy's face was so soft it could be broken by the wind. Pinching a bag of water with each pinch, he put on a profound posture and said, "But this is a world." World? Ning Tianya's eyes widened. There's black and white on it, the little fellow said indifferently. Just like life. There is day, there is night, there is life. There is also death. Just like this universe, there is heaven and earth, yin and yang. Ning Tianya couldn't help but look at the black and white ball hanging in front of him and carefully observed it. It was indeed black and white on the surface. Only black and white were two colors, like two strangely shaped fish. It even had one eye. But in the end, life and death, yin and yang. Heaven and earth. Black and white, heaven and earth. They're all on the same ball. The little fellow's childish voice said softly. Ning Tianya suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. To most people, this sentence might sound like, it's not a big deal, it's just how it is. This sentence was very common. But Ning Tianya was different. Because he was already half detached from life and death, when he heard such a sentence at this moment, his mind was completely captivated by this sentence. Life and death, yin and yang, heaven and earth, they were all here. Or, if they were here, they would still be here even if they were dead. No matter whether they were alive or dead, they wouldn't escape from this category. What did this mean? Ning Tianya suddenly felt a little dazed. The dazed state of ordinary people or the state of mind, but Ning Tianya's dazed state, when one reached this level, would generally be the precursor to an epiphany. The next moment, Ning Tianya felt that he had entered a wonderful state. Tai Yang watched Ning Tianya enter that chaotic state with rapt attention, a strange glow in his eyes. After a long while, he murmured, "The people in this world, it's not just because they're too poor, but also because their aptitude is too good? And the other world? The streets are full of supreme theories, but they can only be used as elementary textbooks. Other than learning to read, they can't think of anything else." He sighed heavily and murmured, "How could the seniors' thousands of years of hard work and inheritance be just for you to learn how to read? Heaven and earth, rain and wind, land and sky. Could it be that they are only pairs? Heaven and earth are black and yellow. The universe is vast and desolate. Could it be that only elementary school students can read them, and that adults avoid them as much as possible? Once treasures are exposed to the outside world like bricks and stones, they don't seem precious anymore. Ning Tianya seemed to have had a dream. He dreamed that he had gone through a reincarnation cycle from birth to death. He was born here, grew up here, and died here. He was in a strange circle from beginning to end. He remembered everything that happened when he was alive, And he also had clear memories of what happened after he died. For a moment, he couldn't help but compare life and death, but he felt bored to death and sighed deeply. Following this sigh, his whole person became clear-headed. In front of him, a little brat wearing open-crotch pants was looking at him with clear eyes. When Ning Tianya's eyes came into contact with this pair of eyes that didn't contain any impurities, he suddenly felt ashamed. He had experienced too much filth in his life, and now he saw such a pair of pure eyes again. Your aptitude is not bad. The little fellow sighed, stared at Ning Tianya's eyes and said, "You've just advanced, right?" "No." Ning Tianya blushed a little. To be called, aptitude is not bad, by a 1-year-old little fellow. Cough, for Ning Tianya, who was tens of thousands of years old, it really felt a little strange. If he had really advanced, it wouldn't be a big deal, but the problem was, he hadn't advanced. This was a little inexcusable. "You haven't advanced?" The little fellow's eyes bulged, as if he was greatly surprised. "You have obviously gained something, but you haven't advanced?" Even that eunuch Feng Qiliang advanced a level when he heard it just now. Ning Tianya was so miserable that he almost wanted to hit the wall. "I'm the fucking #1 expert, but in this little fellow's eyes, I'm not even as good as a eunuch." He vomited blood and said, "What's Feng Qiliang's cultivation? What's my cultivation?" For example, Feng Qiliang only needs 1 grain of rice to advance. "I'll advance. But I need a field." At this point he suddenly shut his mouth. Damn it, why am I telling this to a 1-year-old child? "That's true." The little child nodded deeply. The little thing in his crotch also swayed as he nodded. He said deeply, "Your cultivation is also almost at the entry level." Ning Tianya suddenly shut his mouth. His temples bulged, as if all the blood in his body was about to rush to the top of his head. "I'm almost at the entry level. Do you fucking know that this almost at the entry level person in front of you is the current #1 expert in the heavenly layer world? Is your father really Chu Yang?" Ning Tianya vomited blood and asked. The little fellow rolled his eyes in disdain. "Do you think others are qualified?" Ning Tianya felt like fainting again. "I have martial virtues, benevolent, righteous and wise. In the future, I'll rule the world and benefit the common people. I'll unify the martial world." The great elder said solemnly, "Other than my father, who else is worthy of a son like me?" Ning Tianya coughed twice, resisting the urge to vomit blood. He asked, "Is the window open?" The little fellow said mysteriously, "I never open the window. I've always been open and aboveboard. I only go through the front door." After a long time, Ning Tianya suddenly had a thought. "Are you the reincarnation of some mighty person?" The little fellow looked at him in disdain. He asked, "Did you see one?" Ning Tianya was stunned. "It's that tree." The little fellow said indifferently, "That tree is the world. That pool is the netherworld. That area is the netherworld. That bridge is the passageway between humans and ghosts. Humans are originally nothing but a speck of dust. Along with the surging waters of the netherworld, they enter the passageway between humans and ghosts and are reborn as humans. It is only when they step onto the first level of the world that they gain consciousness and begin to struggle. No matter which level they climb to, they will never be able to break free from the heavens with their own strength alone. Therefore, no matter what level they are at, they can only perish in the end. After perishing, they enter the netherworld again. No matter how high they were when they were alive, they will only be returned to their original state by the water wheel of reincarnation. In other words, only a speck of dust with no consciousness can repeat itself. Therefore, the so-called reincarnation of a mighty person is no different from an ordinary baby under such strict laws of heaven and earth. How could they have a genius like me? Ning Tianya frowned deeply. But this is definitely not the only case. That's because external forces are used to preserve a bit of the true spirit. The little fellow said disdainfully, however, using external forces to preserve the true spirit is ultimately not one's own instinct. Therefore, one's future achievements are also limited. Without waiting for Ning Tianya to speak, The little fellow smiled strangely. This world has also been around for 1,000,000 years. Among the generations of experts, which one of them was a reincarnation of a mighty person and climbed to the highest peak. Ning Tianya was stunned. When Ning Tianya went to the Heaven Imperial Court, he had heard about the reincarnation of a mighty person and was sure that it really existed. However, from what he knew, among the few sovereigns who stood at the peak of the Heaven Imperial Court, there really wasn't such a person. One's own nature and heart is the strongest weapon. One's own body is the sturdiest treasure raft to transcend the world. The little fellow was disdainful. Using external forces or weapons or medicinal power is impossible. Where do spirit weapons come from? Made by humans. Where do spirit medicines come from? Human synthesis. Where does heaven and earth come from? Human development. Using external forces and abandoning one's own body. How can one reach the peak? Ning Tianya was horrified and moved. He asked modestly, "May I ask, what kind of martial arts did you use that tree to cultivate?" The little fellow smiled. "That is the origin technique. Using all the origin between heaven and earth, extracting its essence and removing its impurities to form the great Tao and establish the origin." Ning Tianya seemed to have understood something. If that tree is the world, then the tree is still very small. The little fellow said enigmatically, "When one is in the water and looks at this tree, it is the world. However, at your position at that time, outside the world, there is still a vast sky." Ning Tianya suddenly remembered that the tree in the pond in the Imperial Garden was only that small. Outside, there was the entire palace, the vast mountains and rivers of the lower three heavens, the upper three heavens and the Heaven Imperial Court. Then, was the Heaven Imperial Court also as small as this tree in this universe? Chapter 1365. In the next 2 days, Ning Tianya naturally became the little fellow's protector. He would follow him wherever he went. The relationship between the old and the young actually warmed up rapidly. They stuck together every day, no one knew what they were doing. Tai Butian was greatly comforted by this situation. With Ning Tianya by her side, nothing could go wrong. Of course, Tai Butian didn't know the details of this old and young together. If he knew, the wise emperor would probably pass out. "Cough, Tai Yang, you should start talking today, right? How's that monkey? Has he come out from the bottom of the mountain?" Supremacy Ning asked. "What's the hurry?" The little fellow rolled his eyes. "I still have to practice today." Supremacy Ning sighed. Suddenly, there was a feeling of rejuvenation. When he was teaching his disciple, he racked his brains to tell stories to his disciple. Now that he was protecting this little fellow, he actually had to rack his brains to beg this little fellow to tell him stories. Finally, one day Ning Tianya asked somewhat puzzled, "These things are very profound, but you told me about them the first time we met. Could it be that a child really can't keep things to himself?" "This is fate," the little fellow said mysteriously. "Fate." Supremacy Ning was somewhat smug. It seemed that he was still very popular. This little fellow felt that he was fated and reliable the moment he saw him. "Actually, I guessed wrongly." The little fellow suddenly said somewhat dejectedly, "You're here to protect us? But I've always felt that your cultivation isn't high, that you've just started. So I thought." Ning Tianya was stunned. Then the muscles on his face twitched, then twitched, then twitched again, then twitched once more. At this moment, there was even some resentment. How good would it be if you only said the first explanation? It's fate, but the one that was added later, it was really better not to add it. But in these few days, if one were to talk about benefits, Ning Tianya really benefited the most. He was like a traveler who originally had nowhere to go, but suddenly several paths appeared in front of him. What kind of feeling was it when several paths suddenly appeared in front of a person who had nowhere to go in the desert, and each path led to an oasis? That was how Ning Tianya felt. Back then, when he first came to the Double Heaven Imperial Court, Ning Tianya already knew that his cultivation was far from enough. Otherwise, Shui Leihan wouldn't have specially asked him to watch over the heavens. He was suitable for this task. There were definitely many heavenly layers. Why did it choose him? Firstly, I came up from here. I'm afraid it's because of my aptitude. Or maybe my future isn't that great. It would be a waste to stay up there. It would be better to return to the heavenly layer to do something. Ning Tianya had long been aware of this. Although he felt a sense of loss, he was well aware. This kind of thing could not be forced. But now, the combination of Tai Yang's words and Tai Butian's words had given Ning Tianya a huge opportunity. His aptitude might still be the same as before, there was absolutely no change. However, he had already seen a path that led to the heavens, and he knew where to go. To Ning Tianya, this was no less than an enormous fortune. One day, an old man and a young man were sitting under the world tree. Suddenly, Ning Tianya's expression changed. He felt something in his heart. There seemed to be something unusual. Did the Lan clan come down? In fact, for the past few days, Ning Tianya had been wondering why the Lan clan hadn't come down yet. Their speed was so slow, their reaction was so slow. Of course, Supremacy Ning didn't know that the first batch had actually come down a long time ago. They were only one step behind him. However, that batch of people didn't stop and directly went down again. Feng Qiliang also sensed something and came over as fast as lightning. You look after the palace. Ning Tianya frowned. I'll go and intercept them directly. Feng Qiliang felt relieved and nodded repeatedly. The Lan clan great elder and the rest came down. They didn't encounter any obstacles. Even when they reached Iron Cloud Citadel, it was still peaceful. For a moment, everyone was somewhat bewildered. Logically speaking, they should have been ambushed or met with some difficulties along the way. But now, everything was calm and tranquil. When they reached Iron Cloud Citadel, this feeling became stronger, even calmer. Moreover, the strange thing was that after searching the entire city, they actually couldn't sense any aura of the Lan clan. Then what about Grand Duke Lan Rua? What about the other supreme martial artist experts? Where did they go? Could it be that they had melted in the lower three heavens? After checking from many sides, they finally confirmed that there was absolutely no trace of them here. Great Elder, what do we do now? A high priest asked with a murderous look. Since we can't find them, then the only possibility is that it has something to do with the palace. The Great Elder's face was gloomy. Let's go to the palace and directly capture that emperor for interrogation. We'll definitely be able to get some information. It's just that there's no news of the Grand Duke and the rest. It's very likely that they've already been killed. Someone said. Everyone didn't say anything. Their expressions were equally cold. This wasn't just very likely, it was definitely. They've already been killed. From this point of view, there was already absolutely no possibility of cooperation between the two sides. Go to the palace. The Great Elder waved and led the group in the direction of the palace. Hundreds of people stepped forward at the same time. At this moment, it was as if tens of millions of troops were charging at the same time. Such a team of experts was definitely enough to topple the lower three heavens. Along the way, the crowd automatically turned and separated. A straight path appeared, leading straight to the palace. The wind howled and murderous aura filled the sky. Since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame us for being ruthless. That was what everyone thought in their hearts. They had just walked 1,000 feet when the crowd in front of them suddenly separated. A figure in light robes appeared lightly on the path that everyone had to pass. It was an extremely ordinary-looking old man. He looked at everyone with a smile on his face. It seemed that he was overjoyed to have friends from afar. Everyone, where are you going? The old man asked with a smile. You are. The Great Elder's eyes revealed a guarded look. Could this old man be from the palace? The Great Elder found this old man somewhat familiar. However, even if he wanted to cripple his heart, he definitely wouldn't have thought that the #1 expert in the world, Ning Tianya, would actually appear here. Besides, after Ning Tianya had advanced twice, the aura on his body was already very different from before. He originally existed in the land of legends. The Great Elder and the rest actually couldn't recognize him because their memories were fuzzy. I'm someone who's here to discuss something with all of you. Ning Tianya smiled extremely amiably. How about we find a place to talk? The great elder snorted. You're someone from the palace? Yes, sort of. Ning Tianya nodded. It just so happens that I also have something to ask you. The great elder waved his hand in a very stylish manner. Lead the way. Follow me. Ning Tianya didn't take offense at all. He led the way. The direction that they were heading towards was actually surprisingly the same as when Chu Yang was here, the former site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. After a moment. How about here? Supremacy Ning said with a smile. This place is surrounded by water and quiet. It's just right for a conversation. The great elder's sharp eyes swept over and he said with a slight smile, it's also suitable for other things. Ning Tianya narrowed his eyes. It's also very suitable for other things. Supremacy Ning also felt a little suffocated. Although I only revealed an ordinary level of cultivation for fear of scaring all of you, it's still quite a few grades of supreme martial artist. Why were these few people so impolite? This old thing is quite stubborn. The third high priest gave him a sidelong glance. What else do you want to do to us here? Come over and kneel down. Listen to my questions. He was already full of anger to begin with, but when he came down he actually discovered that he didn't know whether everyone here was dead or alive. Just as he was feeling depressed, he encountered such a top-notch old man. Damn it, your level of cultivation is enough in the lower three heavens. But what kind of person was this man? How is that bit of cultivation of yours enough? The second high priest hurriedly tried to persuade him. Third brother, don't be impatient. Let's get to the bottom of this first. As long as the truth is out, this old man, won't third brother be able to deal with him however you want? In the blink of an eye, you'll be able to deal with him in 315 different ways. Pooh! The third high priest spat. Old bastard, you really don't have any discernment at all. If I don't serve him well later, I've really lived all these years in vain. In this world, this is just a half-assed person. It's this kind of half-baked person who thinks he's the best in the world. Motherfucker, do you think you're Ning Tianya? Instantly, there was a roar of laughter. Ning Tianya's face darkened. What the fuck are you talking about? Cough, all of you have also cultivated for thousands of years. Ning Tianya said with a solemn face, as supreme martial artists, you must have some demeanor of a supreme martial artist. If you also curse like a shrew in the streets, then, aren't you afraid of losing your status? Losing your manners? Fuck you. Manners? Fuck your third great-uncle's manners. The third high priest was met with a mouthful of spit and scolded loudly. If I still have to talk about manners with an ant like you, who do you think you are? You're actually teaching me a lesson with all five of you? Come, son, Grandpa will let you see what manners are. Ning Tianya's expression turned extremely ugly at once. The great elder had already found a high place and sat down. He shouted, Third brother, don't be rash. Bring this old bastard over first. Let me interrogate him later. Ning Tianya turned his head somewhat incredulously and looked at the great elder of the Lan clan in astonishment. He had met this first elder once many years ago. At that time, the first elder's etiquette could be said to have reached a natural level, and he was respectful to the point of being meticulous. He had even praised him for a long time. He didn't expect that after so many years, when he had forgotten about him and only treated him as an ordinary person, he would actually be so vile and despicable. Or perhaps, these people were like this when facing people who were weaker than them? And manners were only used by people who were stronger than them. Chapter 1366. What are you looking at? The great elder rolled his eyes in displeasure. Come here and listen to my questions. Ning Tianya pointed at his own nose with a strange expression. You are calling me? The great elder frowned and said indifferently, If I'm not calling you, am I calling a dog? Calling a dog? Ning Tianya was directly petrified. Do you have to insult me like this? Even when I was facing the Emperor Shui Leihan. I've never been scolded like this. The sudden atmosphere made Ning Tianya almost unable to catch his breath. He had originally thought that if he could persuade them to go back, he would do so. After all, it was not suitable for him to participate in the battle between Tribulation and the big clans, but who would have thought that before he could speak, he would be scolded from head to toe? Someone pushed him from behind and scolded, "What's the matter? Weren't you quite capable just now? Are you dumb now? Hurry up and get over there." Ning Tianya actually staggered from the push and came to the front of the Great Elder. The Great Elder snorted with some dissatisfaction and said, "Let me ask you, where are the people from the Lan clan who came down the last time now?" Ning Tianya took a deep breath. "What? Why are you pretending to be muddle-headed?" The third high priest flew into a rage and stepped forward. "Are you deaf? I'm asking you a question." As he spoke, he raised his hand and was about to give him a big slap. "Beat this old bastard to death." There was a commotion. Ning Tianya's body trembled a little in anger. It had really reached an unbearable level. Even this old man, the #1 expert in the world, has never bullied an ordinary person like this when faced with such a powerless person. It was too much of a bully. The next moment, Supremacy Ning erupted completely. Reaching out, he caught the third high priest's palm in a flash. The next moment, the crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. Then it was a heavy slap. It landed on the third high priest's face. With a loud smack, the third high priest's face suddenly tilted to one side. His hand trembled. The 7th grade supreme martial artist third high priest went limp like mud and knelt in front of Ning Tianya with a thud. The cruelty and pleasure on the third high priest's face had yet to be removed. He was struck down into the abyss. His face had yet to even turn into surprise. Everyone was stunned. Watching Ning Tianya take care of the third high priest so neatly, everyone's minds were filled with shock. No matter how careless the third high priest was and how he was caught off guard, he shouldn't be so weak, right? Just by reaching out his hand, he collapsed? This was a 7th grade supreme martial artist expert, transcending the boundary between immortal and mortal. A blood-curdling scream came from the mouth of the third high priest. Only now did he feel the pain. Ning Tianya merely grabbed lightly just now, and the bones in his right hand were already completely shattered. Just as the screams came out, he came to his senses and immediately shut his mouth tightly, enduring the pain. "Kneel properly. Don't move. Don't randomly shout." Ning Tianya loosened his grip. He said indifferently. Following his indifferent voice, Ning Tianya felt a killing intent that had not risen in his heart for a long time. All of a sudden, a raging fire began to burn like boiling oil. These people had already touched Ning Tianya's bottom line. "So you're an expert." Cold sweat broke out on the third high priest's face from the pain, but he raised his head with a hideous smile and tried to slowly stand up. "But even if you're an expert, in front of so many people, what can you do?" Ning Tianya sneered. "I told you to kneel. Didn't you hear?" All of a sudden, the aura all over his body gushed out like a torrent. At the moment when Ning Tianya released his aura without reservation, above the sky, the wind and clouds changed color. The entire lower 3 heavens felt this powerful pressure at the same time. And this pressure spread far and wide. Everyone was trembling with fear at the same time. These people from the Lan clan who were facing him directly were the first to bear the brunt and felt the terror of this power even more. The third high priest, who had just lifted his knees from the ground, suddenly knelt back down fiercely with a thud. The force was so great that everyone even heard a crisp, crack sound. Immediately, a circle of blood stains spread out on the ground. With this kneel, both of his knees were crushed. But he forgot about the pain. There was only endless fear in his heart. The Great Elder had long been scared out of his wits. He never imagined that this old man who looked like he could be trampled on at will was actually such a terrifying expert. At this moment, Ning Tianya's aura, together with his face, finally reminded the Great Elder of a distant memory. A legendary figure who had already become a legend. Suddenly, his face turned ghastly pale. That was when he was young and unintentionally saw that dragon-like figure. At that time, he was in a state of worship, and under the introduction of his elders, he paid his respects to that person. Since then, he hadn't seen him for thousands of years. But at this moment, he suddenly recalled, why does that person's face in that already blurry memory look so similar to this old man in front of him? The second high priest tried his best to circulate his energy to resist this terrifying aura. Many of the others had already collapsed on the ground. Some of them couldn't even move at all. Under the awe of such a terrifying aura, moving one's little finger was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. My surname is Ning. Ning Tianya said indifferently, my name is Ning Tianya. Boom. At this moment, everyone from the Lan clan felt as if the sky had collapsed. Ning Tianya, the #1 expert of the heavenly layer, the person whom they were pointing at and cursing at in every possible way just now was actually the Ning Tianya whom they worshipped like a god? Elder Ning. The great elder knelt down with a thud. The muscles on his face were contorted and he couldn't speak properly. It's us juniors who failed to recognize Mount Tai. Ning Tianya let out a long sigh and said bleakly, I came here with the intention of protecting 2 people and then persuading all of you to go back. That's all, but I'd never thought that the first time in my life that I would be called a bastard would actually be today. Ning Tianya shook his head. In all my life, I've always done things with a clear conscience. But today, I've been scolded as a dog. Similarly, this is also the first time in my life. For the first time in my life, I've been pointed at by someone and need to kneel down before I can reply. This world, it's really changed so much that I can't understand it anymore. Ning Tianya sighed. It's really the new generation replacing the old. The new generation replaces the old. The great elder's body trembled. Elder, please spare my life. On account of, today is still the first time in my life. For me to have such a strong murderous intent. I won't talk about how many sins you usually commit with such actions. It's just because you've offended me today. Ning Tianya said calmly, get up and fight with me. You can do whatever you want in the lower 3 heavens. Kill you? The great elder almost cried out loud. If all of us could kill you, then would you, Ning Tianya, still be alive? What a joke. Fight with you? The only one in the lower heavens who was qualified to fight with you was Bu Luqing. Perhaps the Dharma Supreme, Lord Wu or the Moon Breeze couple had such strength. But it definitely wasn't us. Today, I have the intention to kill. I must kill you. Ning Tianya's eyes gradually revealed a sharp murderous intent. So, stand up and fight with me. Don't make me look down on the Lan clan. Elder Ning, please spare my life. I really don't know. There were pleas for mercy. What a joke. Facing Ning Tianya. Who dared to fight with him? Even if the elder master of the Lan clan, Lan Buhui, was here, they definitely wouldn't dare to say that they would fight with Ning Tianya. The disgust between Ning Tianya's brows became more and more intense. If they could stand up and fight with Ning Tianya might even sigh at how they dared to take responsibility for their actions. Maybe there would be a turn for the better. But now Ning Tianya only felt disgust. Could it be that you can only bully some very weak people? When you meet a strong person, you become soft shrimps. Since when did the once all-powerful clan become like this? Since that's the case, go to hell. Ning Tianya heaved a long sigh. His fingers fell and slapped the 3rd high priest's forehead. With a soft sound, the 3rd high priest's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. His body slowly went limp and fell to the ground. Ning Tianya's murderous intent had been triggered. He didn't care whether others resisted or not. Murderous intent was never triggered easily, but once it was triggered, it couldn't be stopped. In this world, there really wasn't anyone who could escape from Ning Tianya's pursuit. Thud, thud, thud. Another 3 people fell to the ground. Fight. Even if he's Ning Tianya, so what? Everyone attacked together. The great elder flew up, the fear in his eyes turning into madness. But the moment he rushed forward, he kicked an unlucky person up with the tip of his foot to face Ning Tianya while he himself retreated like a ghost. Ning Tianya let out a long sigh and slapped out a hand. The great elder who was retreating suddenly felt as if he was struck by lightning. He felt a wave of numbness and then fell from the sky. The Lan clan people rushed up from all directions. A trace of pity flashed across Ning Tianya's eyes. He suddenly attacked with all his might, showing no mercy. In just half a cup of tea's time, Ning Tianya walked out of the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. His green clothes were spotless. He stood in front of the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion and paused for a moment. He murmured, "The Lan clan should be finished." Then he turned around and walked toward the palace without looking back. Inside the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, it was peaceful. Not even a trace of blood could be seen. Those who had participated in the battle just now had already disappeared. Perhaps they could only be found by digging up the soil under their feet. What Ning Tianya didn't know was that the last batch of Lan clan people who came to Iron Cloud had been killed by Chu Yang and buried here. Now, the corpses of the Lan clan people were once again buried on this piece of land. Both batches were the elites of the Lan clan. They gathered here. For some reason, ever since Chu Yang left this place seemed to have become a good graveyard. Chu Yang chose to kill here. Similarly, Ning Tianya also chose this place. While Ning Tianya was killing, Chu Yang and his brothers were also carrying out the same task. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.